Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the Irish Breakdown Podcast, brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Happy Thursday. We're almost to the weekend. Have another really fun show coming your way. Part one, we're breaking down the commitment of Jackson Hill, an offensive lineman who was previously committed to UCLA, flipped to Notre Dame. And then afterwards, we're continuing our State of the Program series, talking about the Notre Dame running backs, wrapping everything up with a mailbag today. Looks like you guys already have a head start here in the chat. Thank you guys for getting those questions submitted. You can feel free to continue to submit those as the show goes on. Brian, another really fun show going on today here at Irish Breakdown.
Yes, very, very much looking forward to today's show, Trev. Before we begin, I do want to say hello to my dad. My dad is watching the show, I believe, right now. My dad wanted to obviously thank all of you that prayed for my dad last night. He had surgery this morning. He had a procedure done on his heart. So we are very thankful that went well. I was told it's not a super intrusive process, but my dad's 71 and he's my dad, so I'm obviously going to worry about him a little bit. But he came through. He's now alert. And my mom just texted me like 5 minutes ago. She goes, he's awake and waiting for the show to start. So I was like, all right, cool. Let's get rocking and rolling. So I'm going to have to do our best here today to make sure that we do a great show for all of you, but then also a little something extra for my dad. So I'm excited about the topic today, Trev. Very excited about the topic today. Obviously, we got a commitment we're going to talk about, and then we're going to talk about the running back room, and it's part of our state of the program, but the angle we're going to take today is a little bit different because I think the running back situation is a lot different than the other positions. But of course, Trevor, the news that you and I were talking about this weekend, I said something on Tuesday's show where I said I think the offensive line room will be done sooner rather than later. This is what we were waiting for. And then obviously we'll talk about what's next, but we knew that this commit was going to happen. So lot of fun show today. Dad, try to do the best that we can for you today. But Trev, I'm ready to rock and roll, my dude.
Let's dive into it then, man. Jackson Hill flipped his commitment from UCLA to Notre Dame earlier this morning. He's a 2027 offensive line commit from West Hills, California. Goes to Chaminade Prep High School out west. He's 6'7", 300-pound kid. This is a very underrated pickup because when you go and you pull up the rankings, it's not like he's going to blow you away like Olu Olubabola did with where On3 or 247 has him. But we've seen previously in the past Joe Rudolph being able to go out and find somewhere in a recruiting hotbed state like he did with Anthony Knapp and go down to Georgia and find a guy with the tools that he thinks he could turn into an offensive lineman. I think that's what they're looking to do with Jackson Hill. But another addition to the 2027 recruiting class, man, they're rolling right now.
Yeah, I think when you look at this one, Trevor, look, did Trevor and I have like, oh my gosh, this is the next? No, we didn't. But we'll talk about the kid, and there's a lot to like. And he's one of those, the more you watch him and the more homework you do, the more you like him. But look, here's my evaluation of kind of Joe Rudolph, right? Like there's areas where he still has a lot to prove to us. But I'm not sure about this one now as I would have been than I would have been a couple years ago. Because I think there is a level of a track record that we see, whether it's the late offer to Cam Herron in the 2025 cycle, whether it was looking at Anthony Knapp, and dropping a kid that was going to Penn State that we liked, or that ended up going to Penn State that we liked, Caleb Brewer. There's a lot of things that you look at and say, I think he's earned we're going to give an honest evaluation of Jackson Hill as a prospect, but I think he's earned the benefit of the doubt to where not that we're just going to say, hey, Joe Rudolph likes him, no problem, but that you're going to take a second look at the film if your first impression isn't like really impressed. And that was kind of how it is with Jackson Hill. Is when I first watched it, I liked it. It was fine, but it didn't blow you away. But okay, let me watch it again. Let me go find some game film. Let me look at some of the summer stuff. And the game film and the summer stuff is really where you start to see, okay, now I understand where this offer is coming from. And it's another talented player. And this one is honestly just one that this is a Joe Rudolph recruit. This is one where Coach Rudolph, I'm told, had a conviction about this kid and said, hey, I know we're going to get this guy and that guy, but I really think this kid can play for us down the road. And so they made the push to get him. So this isn't some throw-in recruit into the class just to get your numbers up. You know what I mean? We'll talk about that. But this is a very interesting one too, Trev, because you talk about the backstory of it. This is one that flew under the radar. This is a kid that people were not talking about. I didn't really know much about him until really this weekend because I have looked at UCLA's class So I was familiar with the name because I think Bob Chesney's doing a really nice job with his first class. Like he's doing some nice things. They found some kids like Jackson Hill, these under the radar kids, doesn't have an impressive offer list. The three biggest schools to offer him are Notre Dame, Stanford, and Oregon State. And Stanford didn't offer him until 9 days ago. The rest of his offers are like San Diego State, Cal Poly, schools like that. He is a very high academic kid. He has an offer from Penn and Dartmouth as well. But this is one where he actually visited Notre Dame this spring, and they kept it under wraps. And so, like, you know, when we were finally given a heads up about it, it was like, hey, you know, kind of keep this under wraps until the kid makes his decision. And then also so the kid can let the UCLA staff know what's going on. And so that's what they did. And no, this is not a dancing gift one. So, but this is one of those recruitments, Trev, where we're seeing this a lot lately. And I think this speaks to the power of Notre Dame right now. The draw, I should say, is probably a better word of Notre Dame right now, is how many kids has Notre Dame landed in the last month that didn't get offered until like February, March, April. And there was never a public offer for Jackson Hill. It was just like, you're a take. And so, I mean, Aiden O'Neal didn't get offered until February. David Fuller-Runshoe didn't get offered, I think, until like late January. They're hoping to get him tomorrow, but he's obviously got to make a decision tomorrow. They didn't offer Olu Olababola till March. They didn't offer Jackson Coleman till April 16th. Still not a month since he was offered. And he's been in the class for over a week. All those guys except for Fuller-Runshoe are in the class right now. So you're really seeing Notre Dame just kind of say, okay, we want that kid. Let's go get him. And they go get him. And some of them are like the underrated 3-star kids like Jackson Hill, like Jackson Coleman. They're going to try to get Jackson Vaughn. That's going to be super freaking annoying to have to say all these Jacksons when we get down to it. But the fact is that, you know, Aiden O'Neal's not that kind of guy. He's a highly ranked guy that had big offers. You know, Olu Babola is not that kind of under the radar kid. They beat Miami and Texas A&M. He's a top 20 recruit. So this is kind of showing the evidence of Notre Dame can just, okay, you're committed there, but we want you come over here. Oh, you really like these schools a lot and we're super late to offer. Yeah. Okay. Don't care. Here's your offer. Let's go get that kid. And I think it's an impressive thing to watch right now, Trev, that they're able to do. I mean, and they're not just beating out, you know, San Diego State. Jackson Coleman was on the verge of committing to Oregon. You know, Aiden O'Neal was a guy that Penn State wanted bad. You know, this is a kid that they flipped from UCLA. So they're rocking and rolling right now, Trev. There's no doubt about it. And this is just another example of that. But this is definitely one that flew under the radar. One where you look at the reason it came to be is because Joe Rudolph just had a conviction about this kid. We'll find out if he's right or wrong. But that's where a lot of this came from, is there's kids in this class that he has convictions of. And, hey, I don't care what the recruiting rankings say. I really like this kid. This is one of them, and there's some others in the class too, which we'll talk about later. But, yeah, so Notre Dame now has another offensive lineman, 16th overall player to commit to Notre Dame in this class.
Yeah, man, I agree with a lot of what you're saying. It's almost looking like a lot of these high caliber recruits, whether it's a 5-star like Olu was, or kind of those 3 stars like Jackson Coleman was, or now Jackson Hill was. I'm with you. Keeping track of the Jacksons is going to be a lot of fun here this offseason. That's going to be a task. But
that's called sarcasm, I'm assuming, right, Trev?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, it was.
Yeah.
But a lot of it almost. And I'm sure that this isn't the case, but it's almost like a lot of these kids are just waiting for that Notre Dame offer.
Oh,
that's where they're at now.
There's no question. I mean, that was the case with Jackson Coleman, especially kids named Jackson. I mean, you know, those ones are especially so, right? That's kind of where it was with Jackson Coleman. Notre Dame offers, see him on the 15th, offer on the 16th. He visits 9 days later. He's in the class several days after that. I mean, it's like, and that, again, this is Oregon wanted that kid. Stanford wanted that kid. These aren't kids that, like, again, they're not beating out San Diego State to get Jackson Hill. They're not beating out Colorado State to get Jackson Coleman. They're going after and beating Power 4 programs and getting these players to come play for them. So, and mostly Big Ten programs. I mean, they beat Penn State for Aiden O'Neal. They beat Oregon for Jackson Coleman. They took UCLA, which is weird to say. You know, they took 2 kids at UCLA and Oregon once. So forget you, Big Ten. Just still weird to say that, but that's basically where we're at on this one. But yeah, when you talk about, let's talk about class impact a little bit, Trev, on this one. Obviously, as I said, this is the 16th offensive commit to Notre Dame in the 2027 class. He's the 9th offensive player to commit and the 4th offensive lineman. So when you first talk about class impact, it's what was the need in this class? And then how does he fill that need? Well, number one, because they signed 6 offensive linemen in the 2026 class and also 4 offensive linemen in the 2025 class, and all 4 of them redshirted and have shown good progress so far. I mean, Owen Strebig had a really nice first full year. Matty Augustine's already kind of forced his way into the, I'm the next man in at guard and tackle. Cam Herron is battling for a 2-deep spot at center. And then, of course, Will Black is projected to be the starting left tackle. And if something happens and Will Black isn't the starting left tackle, it's going to be Matty Augustine, who's in the same class. So that class looks good. They're high so far on the 2026 class and what we've seen from them. Grayson McHugh had a great spring. Sullivan Absher had a great spring. Obviously we still have to see Tyler Merrill and Ben Nichols and Gregory Patrick. Charlie Tom had a nice first spring. He's a down the road guy. He looks a lot skinnier than a lot of those other offensive linemen, but you see the athleticism and the toughness. I mean, so there's not one of the 10 that you're like, that kid can't play for us. So when you come into this class, there wasn't a need for big numbers in this class. And honestly, they could have got away with just bringing in 3 and said, okay, we're good. We met our needs. But they're at the point now where they're just piling up talent. And if they think a kid can play, it's like, look, this is where the 105 scholarship limit comes into play, because you have 20 extra scholarships to work with. If you're going to hand out 20 different scholarships, though, everybody can't be a 5-star because that gets real pricey. So I think that's why guys like this come into play, because he's more of a down-the-road kid, so you're not making the same upfront NIL offer that you are to Olu Olababola, to Leighton Von Brandt, to Albert Simeon, guys like that. It's a little bit of a different deal. But this is a kid that they're not getting because they needed bodies. That's the thing. So why take a chance on a kid like this? Well, because there's a conviction about the talent and the potential, not because they have to fill a need. So I think that's the first part of this. Second part of this, specifically on the offensive line, is there's 2 aspects that I think the staff really likes about Jackson Hill. Number one is he is a tackle body. Like, he is a pure tackle body. Now, does he have a pure tackle game? That is something we'll discuss here when we break down the film and kind of talk about the fit. But when you talk about the body, 6'7", pretty long arms. He's not as long as Olu Olababola, but he's in the Will Black, at least from what I can see on film and at workouts. He looks to be in the Will Black category, because Will Black's not as long as like Gerby Lambert and Olu Olababola. Goodness gracious. I'm just going to call him Olu. All right. He's not as long as those guys are, but he's got enough length for tackle. Like, so say he's in sort of the Will Black, Matty Augustine, and Matty's probably a little bit longer than Will is, but he's in that category. And so from a tackle standpoint, body type, he fits that tackle body type. And as we've said before, that is something they really felt they needed to do to restock the depth chart, because this is where it gets interesting, Trevor, because you talk to sources around Notre Dame and their conversation is, we can take some projectable tackles that don't need to play right away. But at the same time, there's a not desperate need. There's definitely a heavy need for tackles. And I think that speaks to 2 things, which one is we want to get away from redshirt freshmen and freshmen having to come in and play. We want to develop some guys and have some guys ready to play down the road. But also, I think it speaks to, we're okay for these guys. Olu doesn't need to play as a freshman. Jackson Hill doesn't need to play as a freshman. James Halter doesn't need to play as a freshman. All those guys have some projectable aspects to their game. With Jackson Hill and Olu, it's more of developing their technical aspect. With James Halter, he's 265, 270. He's got to build up his body. The athleticism, there's all that. But their guys are going to need some time. Well, because of where you are at tackle, getting Grayson McHugh and Charlie Tom a year after getting Owen Strebig and Matty Augustine and Will Black, and then, of course, the year before that, you get Gerby Lambert and in that class, and you say, okay, well, they've got all these tackles. Why do they need tackle bodies in this class? Well, Notre Dame has to start living in the reality of we're recruiting very well. And when you recruit very well, guess what? Sometimes your studs don't make it to their 5th year. And more increasingly now, you're seeing them don't even make it to their senior year. You just saw that with Blake Fisher and Joe Alt. And so they're looking at, like, can you guarantee that Gerby Lambert's going to be here past 2027? Well, it's highly unlikely that Gerby's at Notre Dame in 2028. Highly unlikely. I don't know that you can guarantee that he's going to be here in 2027. I'm not saying he will or won't, but when he's that talented, you have to prepare for that eventuality. But you know that by the time this class is redshirt freshman, Gerby's gone, barring injury. There's also a world in which Will Black starts the next 2 years at left tackle, and he may be gone after 2027. Again, not saying it's going to happen. What I'm saying is, looking at it from Notre Dame's standpoint, they have to say, if this guy's as good as we think he is, we can't assume he's going to be here for 4 years. We have to prepare to replace them a year earlier than expected. So that way they don't get into a situation where both Joe Alt and Blake Fisher leave a year early, and you're one injury away from having to put a true freshman in the starting lineup, which is what happened in 2024. You lose Joe, you lose Blake. So once Charles goes down, who do you have? Anthony Knapp or Gerby Lambert, 2 true freshmen. That's where you're turning. And so now it's like, well, if Blake would have come back, you're good. You got Emil, you got Blake, you got Jagasol, and then, okay, now Anthony needs to be in the 2 deep, but you're not having to put a true freshman starting lineup. I think that's what they're preparing for now. Not that they're pushing guys out after 3 years, or that they're even assuming that that's going to happen, because neither one of those guys are close to first-round prospects yet. But they're first-round talents. They're top 10 talents. And you have to be prepared for the inevitability of, or the potential aspect of it. So that's why tackles in this class were so important, because some of the guys in this class might be going into 2028 battling for a starting job. If Grayson McHugh's everything we hope he's going to be, he's going to lock down a left tackle job. But will Matty Augustine still be at tackle? Will he be at guard? You know, will some of these younger guys that are in the same class, will they transfer? I mean, there's all these things you have to prepare for. And that's why you're seeing Notre Dame going a little bit beyond the numbers standpoint than they normally do. But that's why tackle bodies are so important. The second piece, Trevor, and I'll let you talk a little bit about this, I think the other value and the impact he brings is he's not just he's a pure tackle in body and certain skill, but with his style of play and his ability to bend, this is a kid that could absolutely move inside and help them at guard. And I think that versatility is also something that this staff liked.
Yeah, without a doubt. After the offensive line class that they brought in 2026, which featured a lot of interior guys, Ben Nichols, Tyler Merrill, Sullivan Garvin. I mean, really, like
4 out of 6.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, because Gregory Patrick is also kind of projecting a little bit.
Play tackle, but I think he's probably better suited inside. Yeah.
Yeah, agreed. After you brought in a very heavy load, I mean that literally and figuratively, in the 2026 class along the interior, you needed to have more of a focus on offensive tackle. Now, going back to what Brian said, some might not disagree, but find it interesting that tackle is such an emphasis, because when you look at their roster right now, every scholarship tackle, the oldest one eligibility-wise is a sophomore. Like eligibility-wise, everybody else is sophomore or freshman eligibility. But when you start talking about stacking classes, this is what you need to do. But this goes back to something that Brian and I have talked about on the show before, about how we like tackles that project, that can also project inside. That's something that Harry Heatstain used to do at Notre Dame, is he would recruit predominantly tackles. I mean, you brought up Sam Mustipher, played left tackle when he was in high school. Jarrett Patterson was a left tackle when he was in high school. I think for a season or two, they experimented with him at left tackle at Notre Dame.
It was early in his freshman year when that first fall camp, when we went to watch them practice, might have been the first spring. I can't remember if he was an early enrollee or not. I don't think he was. But I just remember watching him at left tackle early on. And then they moved him relatively – he moved during his freshman year, but when he showed up at Notre Dame, left tackle is where they gave him a shot. And then it was, let's see how he moves, let's see how his body works, and then say, hey, can he do this? And Coach Heatstain would have guys snap, see if they could snap. You know, he would do things like that, and Jarrett was just natural at it, and then they made the move. But to your point, he moved inside. I mean, Liam Eichenberg has started at center in the National Football League. Robert Hainsey is a starting center in the National Football League. They were both tackles at Notre Dame. Tommy Kramer started at right tackle and then moved inside to guard. Alex Barr started at right tackle, then moved inside to guard. I mean, he's just starting right tackle in 2016, moved inside to guard. Tommy Kramer started at right tackle, moved inside to guard. Josh Lugg started at tackle, moved inside to guard, then moved to center, then moved back out to tackle in 2021, right? I mean, so there is that aspect where, yeah, we're going to see who can stick out there, but then we're going to move those kind of guys inside. And why do you do that? You're doing that if your desire is to have athletes on the field as well. You don't just want big maulers who can't move. There's a time and place for that, and that's why Coach Easton liked Christopher Tarrick, and that's what Christopher Tarrick's in the 2 deep, and will be in the 2 deep another year, because he's not the athlete some other guys are. He's not a stiff, but he's not that nimble Will Black, Gerby Lambert type of athlete. He's a big mauler, but by and large, that's why I want length, I want power, I want movement ability. And when you run as much duo as what Notre Dame runs, you have to be able to be physical and get vertical movement. Same thing with the inside zone. But when you run as much mid zone and outside zone as what Notre Dame does, and you pass pro as much as Notre Dame does, you also need those athletes. And so this is a shift, in my opinion, for Joe Rudolph, because even last year, Trev, the 4 interior guys that we talked about, they were all tackles in high school. Sullivan Garvin was a left tackle in high school. I think Tyler Merrill was the only guy that really did anything at guard. Ben Nichols was a right tackle and a left tackle at different times. Gregory Patrick was a right tackle and played some left tackle in high school. It's a similar thing. They're all taller, 6'4", 6'5", 6'6". They have some athletic ability, but they then move them inside the guard. And I think that's a smart thing. But some of those tackles in high school were not going to be tackles in college. Ben Nichols is not going to, maybe could play right tackle. Tyler Merrill was not going to play tackle in high school, in college. Sullivan Garvin was not going to play tackle in college. Like Ben Nichols, unlikely. Gregory Patrick's the only one that you could see doing that. So there was a need for guys that, even though they were tackles in high school, can play tackle in college. And I think that's where that emphasis is coming from. But I did think it was worth building on what you said, Trev, to point out that this is a shift for Joe Rudolph, who early in his career recruited just guards. I mean, just like pure guards. And we're seeing a little bit of a shift away from that to more tackle. Like Peter Jones is a guard on the current team. He was a tackle in high school. Coach Easton recruited him. So you're definitely seeing more and more of that, of guys who can do both. And then let's see who can play where. And we'll put it, because like, what if there's a world in which Owen Strebig, Matty Augustine, and Will Black are 3 of your 5 best linemen, but none of them can play guard?
Sure.
So then one of your 5 best linemen has to sit on the bench. But because Matty Augustine can move in and play guard, and honestly Will Black could too, although I don't want him to, now you can get your guys on the field together. So, what if James Halter, Olu, and Jackson Hill are all 3 of your 5 best down the road, and let's say they add another, a Leighton Von Brand or an Albert Simeon who can also play tackle. Well, man, you got a bunch of tackles. Yeah, but 4 of those kids can play guard, not have to play guard. And I think that's the key. It's not can you play guard, it's do you have to play guard? Tyler Merrill has to play guard. Sullivan Garvin has to play inside. I think Ben Nichols most likely has to play inside. Gregory Patrick doesn't have to. Olu doesn't have to. James Halter doesn't have to. And Jackson Hill doesn't have to. And I think that was the focus in this class from a class impact standpoint.
The only other thing that I'll add as far as class impact goes is there's also been a theme that Mike Denbrock wants this offensive line to also be bigger. And we definitely saw that in the 2026 class. And now I think that this class is starting to follow suit. Olu Olubabola is, he's 6'6", 6'7", 295, anywhere from 295 to like 300 pounds. Sometimes on his film, kind of looks like he's closer to that 285 range. But we talked about his frame when we broke down his commitment. James Halter is, 6'5", 6'6", in that 270 range. Even Richie Flanagan, he's a D tackle, but he's 6'3", 6'4-ish, 260. And now, you bring in somebody like Jackson Hill, who's 6'7", 300 pounds. That theme is starting to be consistent through multiple recruiting classes. It's not just we want to get bigger on the offensive line. We did that in the 26 class. We checked that box. Now it's just kind of back to recruiting like higher upside kids. So it's another thing that Jackson Hill adds to this class, the continuity of getting bigger.
Yeah, there's no doubt. He is not a small kid, Trev. There's no doubt about that. No doubt about that. So I think the final piece when we talk about class impact, Trev, that doesn't necessarily impact it directly. This is not, number one, there's 2 things. Number one, this is not the kind of commitment that you're bringing in to say, hey, we're trying to win the recruiting rankings battle with this kid. You know, that's not kind of the why you're bringing him in. I think more of what I'd say is this. I like the California impact. That's the key for me. It's the California impact. I also like to point out too, when you talk about James Halter, his dad back in 1991, when he was at Notre Dame, was 6'6", almost 6'7", 296 pounds, which for back then, that was his junior. That's pretty big for back then. So like, there's that DNA where you're like, okay, we've met his dad. His dad's a pretty big fella. James has basically the same build. And that's exactly what they did with Joe Alt. I mean, yeah, he was only 240 pounds when Notre Dame first started recruiting him. But it was a situation where it's like, yeah, he may only be 240 pounds, but he has the same exact build as his dad, who was a 300-pounder in the NFL. And so, yes, just to kind of point that out. But I do like the fact that you are. I don't think California is ever going to be what it was for Notre Dame in the past. And I'm okay with that for reasons I've discussed before. You've got to be real choosy with who you bring from there. Give me the Madden Faramos, give me the Kingstons, give me a guy like Jackson Hill because I want some toughness. But that's not always true with California kids. You got to be smart about it. Gavin Williams was that way. They're not going to get him, but like you got to be smart about those kind of guys. And so when you find that fit, go get them. And that's another thing that Notre Dame did here is it does give you a little bit of a California flavor in this class. He's the second California kid to commit to Notre Dame, but he's the only one currently in the class. And I think, like I said, that kind of tracks with what we've talked about.
Brian, I think it's time that we dive into some film, watch a little bit of Jackson Hill here.
I'm all about that, Trev. It's just not cooperating with me right now. So for a couple things you're going to see here as we start watching this film with Jackson Hill, very inconsistent from a footwork standpoint. There's times where I think his feet look really heavy, and there's times he looks pretty nimble. The one thing you're going to see though is this is a big kid. He's very tall. He's long. He's powerful. You see that right there, Trev. I think he plays with pretty good pad level. He can bend well. This is not a great example of that. He just kind of runs into this guy. But look at the bend though. So like this isn't great pad level. So don't look at the top part, but look at the bottom part. He doesn't lunge. His sink all comes from the hips. As he starts punishing that guy, his knees bend more. He doesn't bend. He doesn't lean over. You know what I mean? And that's something that you'll see from him as well. Needs a lot of technical work, but this is a kid that's a former catcher in high school. Grew up playing catcher. I don't know if he's still doing that, but I think so. You see the ability to kind of get out of that stance, the ability to kind of pop up. You're going to see from him, but big, strong, physical kid. That's on top of the size, Trev, the strength and the demeanor to just punish people. They're playing Notre Dame, home of, if you guys remember, Dane Chris and also Anthony McDonald, played at the high school, but he plays good competition. He's not playing some little tiny, private school league in California. They're playing good football teams.
Yeah, and in a lot of these clips, too, you can see why he projects a little bit. I'm talking build. Obviously, skill set falls in line with this, too. But as far as his build, he's 6'7", but he has a long torso.
Yeah.
Like he's not a lot of leg. It's
right.
very similar to what the conversation that we had about Alex Bars a couple of shows ago about how, Alex Bars was very, very tall, but he had more of a longer torso, gave him
right.
leverage to be able to play inside.
Right. When he would sink his knees, he was lower than you'd expect a 6 foot, certainly lower than like a Micah McGlinchey. This is a clip here too. He's a pretty nimble athlete. He stays light on his feet here. So there's some clips where he looks heavy footed, Trev. And then there's a clip like this where I think he's got a nice little kick slide here. Not maybe technically so. I'm more talking athletically. Usually I don't really evaluate high school linemen on the technical prowess as much as does he have the physical tools to play the way you want. So when you watch him here, pretty light on his feet, good bend, never stops moving his feet. Then when he gets the advantage, he just drives this guy down the field, right? And so you do see some nimbleness that makes me feel better when like the first couple clips you don't. Like right here, this looks terrible. I mean, this is just not great. And yeah, I mean, you could explain why. I don't really know why. But so when I see clips like this, I'm like, I need to see something else that makes me feel better. I don't understand why this is on a highlight. Like that part right there doesn't impress me. I don't like the movement early on. But then you'll see another clip later where you're like, okay, that's the kind of movement I want to see. There's a video of him doing cone drills this summer, and you're like, that's not the kid I saw in film.
Yep.
So that's what leads me to believe, let's be straight up right here. That clip and this clip are two clips that when I first watched them, I was like, I don't love this, because I see it. And Trev and I talked about this the night that I found out he was going to come to Notre Dame. I think he's kind of heavy-footed. And then there's some other clips, if you rewatch it, that you see a kid that's nimble. But when we found the summer workout tape, that's when my opinion started to change, because you see a kid that's like doing cone drills, sinking his feet, getting out of, and if you guys want to see it, you can go to his Twitter page. He has that stuff up on his Twitter page. This isn't like secret film that Trevor and I have access to and nobody else does.
Right.
It's stuff from, that he did in summer workouts. And what I'm told is that's kind of part of the stuff that Notre Dame had access to, not the Twitter page, but like other workout stuff that they had access to that caused Joe Rudolph to really, really fall in love with this kid, because you see the way he's able to bend and move. And it's like, okay, well, why doesn't he do it on the football field? Then you start to study the technique. You're like, okay, because technically he's not where he needs to be. It's not something that he's necessarily super, super comfortable with. So when I see plays like this, what impresses me is the power. What doesn't impress me is necessarily like the athletic traits or the technical traits or the pad level. So when you see those other things, that's when you start to say, okay, that's why we say, why is he a little bit raw? Why is he a little bit projectable? So when I see a clip like this does not impress me. That's slow. That pull is really slow. But then I watch him do cone drills without pads on, and he's moving way faster than that, which tells me this is something that is because he's not comfortable doing it. His technique isn't where it needs to be, but he physically has the tools to do it. That's why those things matter. He physically has the tools to do it, and you see enough of it. He's another kid, too, that's a lot like Olu, where as I watch game film, you like him more than your – because here's how I break down film, Trev, and you and I know you're the same way. First thing I do is I pop in the huddle film that you guys are watching now, just to give me a glimpse of, okay, what am I working with here? Then I go find game film. And so usually it's like the huddle tape is great, and then you watch game film and you're like, okay, this is an issue, that's an issue. What's interesting about their last two commitments is their game film is a lot better than their highlight tapes. Because I think linemen tend to think me putting this guy on the ground is a highlight. Like, no, your technique is terrible. So what? You put a 205-pound kid on the ground. And so when you watch game tape, you're like, I wish that was on there, but that was just basic pass pro. I wish that was on there, but there's not this bearing a guy. Like, and that's why it's important to be able to see these things. So when I see the game film, you start to see a guy that can move better than maybe he does. So when a guy does it sometimes and not others, what you realize is the tools are there. I love this little combo block here. The tools are there. You just got to enhance it. That's why we say he's a projectable kid. He's a guy that's got – you use the word project, I guess, is the term, but I don't love that word because I feel like that has a connotation of like this guy's going to need 4 or 5 years. I think Olu's a project. But I think he's a project that just needs the whole freshman year, and then he'll be ready to help you out. Where's Jackson Hill? That I don't know. But you can't teach the size, Trev. You can't teach the physicality. This pretty nimble play right here to go inside, then work outside pretty quickly, get on that linebacker. You see enough on there to say there's some stuff you can work with here. But you also see why he isn't a 4-star on my board. All right. The upside grade is a lot better than the current grade because there's a lot of work needed. But you also understand why Joe Rudolph kind of fell in love with this kid. There's enough there, to say, okay, I get it. I get it. We'll see. I mean, he's taking a bit of a risk, but we'll see. But there's definitely stuff to work with here.
Yeah, without a doubt. You have to pay attention to his tools. You can't teach his strength. You can't teach his size. And then you also can't teach the mindset that he plays the game with. One of the things that we praised when we were watching Olu's film and then watching Leighton Von Brandt's film and Albert Simeon's films, they kind of just play with that chip on their shoulder about like, hey, I'm looking to bury this kid. I'm looking to bury the opponent in front of me. And Jackson Hill also plays with that as well. So he's going to be coming to Notre Dame with a solid foundation. Now, very, very raw technically. There's going to be a lot of things that he's going to have to improve on to be able to take that next step and become a starting offensive lineman at Notre Dame. But I'm with you. With kids like this, you really have to pay attention to the tools. And I'm with Brian. When he first showed me the film, I was like, the huddle film, I was like, okay, this is a guy to take.
We weren't impressed. We'll be honest. We weren't blown away initially. There was some stuff we liked. I mean, I could read the text that Trev sent to me. The power stood out immediately. I mean, that's the thing the size and the power stood out immediately. I'm not going to read your text, Trev. Don't worry. But like, that's the thing that we talked about. Big and strong, vertically oriented. Those are things that you did say, right? And so there's some things to work with, but the more you do the research, that's when we were like, okay, I kind of get this. This one makes more sense. But that was not our initial reaction. I'm just going to be honest with you. But that's why you keep diving into film. You keep looking for things, and you understand, well, if Rudolph made his evaluation based on this, this, and this, then I've got to try to be able to get access as much as I can to this, this, and this, so I can see if I can make a similar eval. And that's where you start to say, okay, I get it now. I get where you're coming from with this kid. Like, let's see what he can do. Let's see what he can do. Sullivan Absher's the guy. If you're a Notre Dame fan and you want a Notre Dame comp, Sullivan Absher's the one that really tracks with me. Sullivan was 6'7", 295, 300 pounds, physical, decent feet, just needed work. I think Jackson probably has a little bit more tackle to his game than Sullivan did. But if you like a comp, Sullivan Absher is a very similar comp, the body type, style of play, athletic traits, and all those type of things.
Brian, let's tie a bow on Jackson Hill's commitment and talk about what's next on the recruiting trail for the offensive line.
Well, I mean, look, it's this. The board is kind of where it's been. It's Leighton Von Brandt and Albert Simeon. And from what I'm told from multiple sources that I've talked to now, they're going to recruit both of them. They're not going to drop Albert Simeon or Leighton Von Brandt because they took this kid. That's what I was told. Now, here's the gamble. Somebody said we don't need a project guy, and I don't disagree with that. But I don't think that's how the staff looks at it, as I explained earlier. They're looking at it as like, okay, you focus on the project. We're going to focus on the upside and what he could be. Here's the deal. If every kid that you recruit is someone who's ready to play in year 1 or 2, then when you get to year 1 or 2, you got a lot of guys that think they're ready to play, and they can't. So what are they going to do? Some of them are going to leave. But when you got a kid like this, it's partly about building a roster. If you get a kid like if this kid is not ready to play by his redshirt freshman year, or at least battling for a 2-deep spot, I don't think he's going to be like unhappy in transfer, where Olu is may not be as happy, or Leighton Von Brandt or Albert Simeon. You know what I mean? Like there's different timelines. But what the Notre Dame staff is focused on when you're looking at a kid like this is we're not worried about how long it's going to take him to get where he needs to get to. We're looking at what can he be when he gets there. And then it's our job as coaches to go get him there. And so I understand that thought, and I'm not pushing back on it at all. It was a comment from Michael Morris. I'm not pushing back on that at all. I'm simply saying, like, I understand where you're coming from. I'm simply trying to get you guys to understand, but that's not how the Notre Dame coaching staff looks at it. They don't look, well, this is a 3-star kid that might need 3 or 4 years. They're looking at, this is what this kid can be if we coach him up. And the side part is, and I'm confident this is something they're looking at, he won't maybe be as ready as early as some others, which is not necessarily a bad thing. When you talk about roster, he might be okay sitting on the scout team a couple of years as he learns the position. Like, not every kid is that way. And you go get a top 100 player, then okay, how long is he going to stay sitting behind Will Black and Grayson McHugh and maybe Olu, maybe a Leighton Von Brandt, maybe an Albert Simeon, maybe a Matty Augustine? Like, how long are those guys going to sit behind those guys? Here's the second part too. You're building your depth chart with a kid that you didn't have to go break the bank for from an NIL standpoint. That's something you got to look at as well. Not that this kid's not getting an NIL deal, but it's not going to be what Olu got. It's not going to be what Leighton Von Brandt's going to get. It's not going to be what Albert Simeon's going to get, or probably not what James Halter got, that kind of thing. You know what I mean? So there's just a lot of different ways to look at it. And I understand where Notre Dame's coming from. I have no problem taking Jackson Hill. I like taking Jackson Hill. My only thing is the what's next part. You got to make sure that this isn't going to cost you the other 2 kids on the board. If you lose Albert Simeon because you just get out recruited or outspent by A&M or LSU or somebody like that, that's fine. That's the life we live, right? But you can't lose him because, well, we have 5 now, so we're going to stop recruiting him. I've been told that's not going to be the case. It's imperative that Joe Rudolph does not back off of Albert Simeon because of this kid being on the board. And as we've said, things are trending in a very good direction with Leighton Von Brandt. So I think Notre Dame's done a great job there. Albert Simeon's the one that's more of the it's up in the air. As long as they don't back off Albert Simeon, I'm fine with taking this kid, because I don't think Albert Simeon's going to watch this kid or anybody else and say, "Well, I don't know if, that kid might take my." I think Albert Simeon knows, and I've been told it's going to be made very clear to him, "Hey, you're the dog. You're the big dog that we're talking about. Like, this isn't about you. This is about down the road. This is a situation where you may be a 3-year starter for us, and this kid's a 2-year starter after that. That kind of thing for Albert Simeon." So I've been assured. I mean, we'll see how it plays out, but I've been assured that they are not backing off of Albert Simeon or Leighton Von Brandt. And obviously, with Albert Simeon, as we've said before, you've got to get to that unofficial or that official visit date. That's the reality. And so I also of the understanding that this is a kid that like other linemen have known about. This is a surprise to us, but I don't know that it's a surprise to the other recruits. So what's next? You still go after Leighton Von Brandt and Albert Simeon. You still got to get one of them. We've said that. You've got to get one of the two. Dream class is you get both of them.
Yeah.
That's the world. And look, as Joe Mark just pointed out, they're not going to lose a lot of offensive linemen after this year because of graduation. But you don't, number one, this is not what Joe Mark said. I'll get to what he said in a second. I've said this before. You're not recruiting to replace your senior class. You're recruiting to place underclassmen, and what class you're referring to depends on the position. So you may bring a freshman in to replace a junior at wide receiver. You may bring a freshman in to play as a freshman at running back, cornerback. You're not doing that on the offensive line. And so you're really replacing some of the sophomore eligibility guys with this class, because those guys will be juniors when this class shows up. And when this class is redshirt freshmen and they're ready to battle, those guys are senior eligibility. Not all of them are going to make it to senior. And this is what the comment that Joe Mark made. There's a chance you're going to lose guys before they get to their final seasons once the depth chart starts shaking out over the next year or two. It's not just this next year. It's also what happens after 2027 that then opens up opportunities. So do you want to fill those voids with 26 and 27 recruits? Or do you want to try to let's go back to playing a freshman again or a redshirt freshman again? Well, if it's a 5-star talent like a Will Black, like an Olu, like a Gerby Lambert, then sure, I'll play a redshirt freshman, but not everybody's going to be in that boat. And so that's why I think that they're willing to go bigger in numbers, because football has changed. You have to look at roster building differently than you did 5-6 years ago, where when you had as many underclassmen as Notre Dame has on the offensive line 5 years ago, there's no way you're taking 6 guys last year, and there's no way you're even considering taking 6 guys this year. One, you only have 85 freaking scholarships. You can't have 25% of them being in one position group. I don't care how important that position group is. It's 5 out of 22 starters. It can't be 20 plus out of 85 scholarships, right? So the new world we live in is 105 scholarships. The other world we live in is that the possibility of retaining all your linemen through their senior season is much less than it was 4 or 5 years ago. And that's part of it as well.
Yeah, without a doubt. And like we brought up before, Notre Dame is probably one of the few, if potentially the only major program that has not had to supplement their offensive line through the transfer portal. It's building up classes like this is one of the reasons why. Rather you bring in a big man class in the 2027 class and the 26 class than be in a position in 2027 or 2028 where then you have to go to the transfer portal and pay a little bit more money to go get an experienced offensive lineman. Rather have it be somebody that you developed within the walls of your own program. So it's another reason too. I'm with you completely.
Yeah. I did want to say something here real quick too, Trev, about this whole thing is at some point in time, you get to the point where you've got to also understand is no, they don't want to take 6 offensive linemen this year. But when you've got Olu Babola, Leighton Von Brandt, and Albert Simeon on the board, it's like, who do you say no to?
Right.
You take them all and then let it sort out. That's kind of what you do. And that's kind of what they're doing here. Wait. Before we move on to the next thing, I've told you guys in the chat, stay on topic. There's one exception we'll allow you guys to get off topic. And that's our guy, Archer452, our resident Ohio State fan. He's got a new baby. and his baby was born this morning. So I told him in the chat, I said, hey, man, we're talking O-line, not babies. But in all seriousness, man, we're happy for you. And I hope mom and baby are doing very well. But congratulations. I think, is this number 5 or 6 for you? Like, you guys are getting kind of up there. You're like in Vince territory now, I believe. So, yeah, you guys are definitely getting up there, man. But I definitely wanted to give you a shout out. And obviously I was joking about we're not talking about babies. We're talking O-line. We always talk about babies here, but just wanted to give you a shout out and a congratulations, my dude. And we hope that mom and baby are doing well. And want to congratulate you on another birth of a healthy child. So way to get her done, buddy.
Brian, up next here on the Irish Breakdown podcast, brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. We're talking about the Notre Dame running back room, and it's a continuation of our State of the Program series, but we're looking at it with a little bit different of a light with the running back room. And simply put, it's because they're the only position room on the entire roster that had to replace not one, but 2 first-round NFL draft picks, which raises a lot of questions about the state of this room. We can break down State of the Program like we will, I believe, tomorrow about the defensive backs, and we could talk about the state of the program with wide receivers and their upside, but none of those rooms have to replace a first-round draft pick. We'll be having that conversation next year with the defensive back room. I'm very confident in saying that. But reality of the situation, Notre Dame is in a spot where they have to replace Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price after they were both taken in the first round of the NFL draft, and that's kind of where they're at. No position room has bigger shoes to fill, and that's where we have to start this conversation with the running back room.
I mean, Trev, it's such an interesting conversation because when you look at this group, it's not your typical, well, you guys have some guys to replace. Like replacing Malachi Fields is not going to be easy. Replacing Billy Strouth and Emil Wagner is not going to be easy. Now we've talked about how we think they're going to even be better on the offensive line, might even be better, but it's not going to be easy. Guys have to improve, they have to get better. It's not going to be easy to replace Josh Burnham and Junior Tulamaka and Jordan Botelho. It's not going to be easy to replace Jared Dawson and Gabriel Rubio and Donovan Heinrich. It's not going to be easy, to replace Eli Raridan. That's what everybody's dealing with. This is kind of like Ohio State having to replace Sonny Styles and Arvell Reese. Like, not every replace and reload is the same. And when you're replacing 2 running backs that became the first running backs in the history of the common draft to be the number 1 and number 2 running backs taken, that's big. But on top of that, you have to look at it, Trevor. It goes beyond just, well, the draft was this. It also goes back to your entire offense was built around those 2. And it's not as simple as just plug in the next 2 guys and expect them to do exactly what this group is going to do. Like, your entire run game was built around the skill set that Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price brought to the table. And fortunately for Notre Dame, they both dominated on the same runs. Now, I think you can argue that Jadarian was a little bit better on this run than Jeremiah was, and vice versa. I've broken those numbers down. But the reality is they could both run mid-zone like monsters. They could both run duo and inside zone. I think Jeremiah was a little bit better in inside zone. I think Jadarian was a little bit better with duo because he would bounce a little bit more effectively. Just read it a little bit better. And at least this year, I think last year, Jeremiah ran duo a little bit better from what I remember just on film and then also the numbers. But it's not just, okay, take them off the depth chart and plug these 2 guys in. You have to look at it from the impact they have on the offense. And I think that's the biggest thing. There's not really anybody in college football outside of, in my opinion, what Ohio State has to replace a linebacker that is the same type of, wow, that's going to be hard to replace, not just because they're elite talents, but everything Ohio State did defensively last year, in my opinion, was built around the skill set that Sonny Styles and Arvell Reese brought to the table. So you're asking Riley Pettijohn and you're asking Peyton Pierce and those guys to say, you're not only replacing guys in numbers, but they were the heart. I mean, the defense was geared around them. Same thing here with the running backs in Notre Dame. The entire offense, pass game wise, run game wise, was all built around those 2 backs. And that's why I think, Trev, when you see people with some hesitation about, just how good Notre Dame will be, and not like they're going to be 12th, but I can't put them number 1 or 2 because, man, their whole offense was built around those 2 guys that are gone. I'm actually somewhat sympathetic to that. Now, I'm also think that we should be past that now, and we'll explain why. But I understand you lose 2 generational players off the same team, and I think Jadarian Price was a generational player. He just didn't have generational production because he was in the same backfield as Jeremiah Love. But I'm actually somewhat sympathetic. Like, I understand the hesitancy of, can the Notre Dame offense still be dominant without those two guys who were really the offense ran through those two players.
Yeah, and the numbers they put up in their career back that up, Brian. I'm with you completely. I'm with you, and I'm with a lot of other fans that I'm confident about the talent that they have in the room. I know we'll get into that discussion, but you also can't ignore they're losing two running backs that in their careers they combined for 4,574 rushing yards, 756 receiving yards, 57 rushing touchdowns, and 9 receiving touchdowns. And that doesn't include any of the 3 touchdowns that Jadarian Price had as a kick returner, or one of the 3, close to 100 plus yard kick returns that he had either. So that's kind of the world that we're living in with the running back room. It's not they'll be totally fine or the sky is falling, but it's something that you have to acknowledge, because when you talk numbers and you want to know what running your offense through two guys looks like, they both get drafted in the first round. One of them wins a Doak Walker Award for the first time in program history. Jadarian Price, he put up, 674 rushing yards and 11 rushing touchdowns last year. He only caught like 5 passes. 2 of them went for touchdowns.
His touchdown to catch ratio is ridiculously stupid.
Oh, it's nuts.
By the way, his career, it's like if Jadarian catches the ball, he's going to have a really good chance of scoring. I'm actually looking at that now. So last year, Trev, Jadarian had, like you said, he had 6 catches and 2 touchdowns. And then only 4 catches the year before, and he had 5 catches the year before that and a touchdown. So he's only had, let's see, in his career, he's had 15 catches. 3 of them have gone for touchdowns. So 1 of every 5 catches goes for touchdowns. So in the NFL, guys will easily catch 50, 60 balls. At that rate, that's 10 freaking receiving touchdowns. Now, he won't do that, but it just puts into context, when this kid touched the ball, he had, 22 career turns? 3 of them went for touchdowns. His touchdown per touch ratio is just insane. Absolutely insane. And there's a reason why I had a buddy, actually D. Trollhunter, texted me the other day, and people are fired up about Jadarian and for the Seahawks. I'm like, yeah. Last year, Trev, he had 131 touches. That's it. He had 15 touchdowns. That includes kick returns. Because he had only 113 carries, 11 touchdowns. So that's 1 every 10 carries. 1 every 3 catches was a touchdown, and 1 of every 6 kick returns was a touchdown. That's an insane touchdown to touch ratio. And that's your number 2. You know what I mean? Like, that's why we talk about this isn't just an easy replace and reload. There's a lot more that goes into this conversation. I will say this, however, couple things. Number 1, I don't think Notre Dame is getting enough credit and enough benefit of the doubt for their ability to replace two guys. And some of you might be saying, well, hold on a second. You guys just talked about 2 generational players, except I get all that. But here's the deal. We're not expecting them to be Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price. And I think what Notre Dame has done for the last, I'd say, 11 seasons is show that this is a replace and reload program at running back. And that should be even before Marcus Freeman got here. It really started in 2015. CJ Prosise, breakout season, 1,000-yard rusher, goes in as a 3rd-round draft pick. He leaves after that year because it was his last year. Josh Adams steps into the mix. Would have had a 1,000-yard season in 2016 if not for the season being cut short because of the fact they sucked and they didn't play in a bowl game. Goes out in 2017, rushes for over 1,400 yards, leaves. Dexter Williams steps into the mix, only had 30-some carries the year before. He rushes for almost 1,000 yards in 8 games. He leaves. Tony Jones Jr. comes in. He would have had a 1,000-yard season if he doesn't miss 2 games because of an injury. He's very good. He goes on to have a very nice NFL career. He leaves. Kyron Williams steps in. Back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons. He leaves early, goes and is drafted by the Rams and is turned into a Pro Bowl running back. That next season, they have a 3-headed monster that was absolutely outstanding in Audric Estime, who went for over 900. He was like 920. Logan Diggs went for 822. And Chris Tyree, I think, was 444. So you're talking about over 2,000 yards of rushing out of 3 backs, and they had no pass game all year to help them out. Then the next year, Logan leaves. Chris Tyree moves to running back. Audric steps in, has one of the best seasons in Notre Dame history, has over 1,300 yards, breaks the school record of 18 rushing touchdowns. He leaves and gets drafted. And as Trevor and I said, then, guys, they're going to be fine because we knew what was coming down the pike with Jeremiah and Jadarian. They're now dominant. So the expectation should not be, will they be as good as Jeremiah and Jadarian? No, they won't as far as impact. But what we've seen is not every guy that stepped into the mix was just like the guy from before. Dexter and Josh were different players. Dexter and Tony were different players. Tony and Kyron were different players. Audric and Jeremiah were extremely different players. But what they've been able to do is just keep pumping out basically 1,000-yard seasons every year. The only thing that's kept Notre Dame from not having a 1,000-yard rusher was either injuries, which is true for Tony Jones Jr. and true for Dexter. Well, Dexter wasn't an injury, it was a suspension. And then the fact that they had 3 guys splitting carries. I mean, if Chris Tyree doesn't carry the ball that year, you've got 2 guys over 1,000 yards rushing that season. So I think Notre Dame does deserve a little bit more benefit of the doubt here from like a national media standpoint and a Notre Dame fan base standpoint than what we've seen in the past, as long as your expectation is not, will they be Jeremiah and Jadarian? It's more of, will they be really good at running back? That's the conversation we need to have.
Without a doubt. And historically, not even at Notre Dame, we've seen this happen before across college football. That's another benefit to this conversation. I would say that 3 of the best collegiate running backs I've seen in my lifetime are Christian McCaffrey, Saquon Barkley, and Derrick Henry. I don't think that that's a crazy thing to say in my lifetime. Those are 3 of the best, not the 3 best, 3 of the best.
Yeah.
And when you go through and you look at what Stanford and Penn State and what Alabama had to replace, there's been a history of running back rooms being productive post really, really elite talent, which led on to be really, really elite NFL talent. I mean, in Saquon Barkley's final season in 2017, 1,200-yard rusher, 18 rushing touchdowns. That was followed up by Miles Sanders in 2018. In his one season as the premier guy in Happy Valley, he was a second-round draft pick. Christian McCaffrey in his final 2 years at Stanford, 3,600 rushing yards, 21 rushing touchdowns, 955 receiving yards. Amazing season.
Broke Barry Sanders' total yards record.
Absolute stud. And then what happens? In 2017, Bryce Love steps up, and he was a 2,000-yard rusher, 2,100-yard rusher, had 19 rushing touchdowns. Same thing with Derrick Henry after his 2015 Heisman season. A lot of people are talking about, will Alabama's run game take a step back? Well, as a room, they didn't skip a beat. They had Damian Harris came in, rushed for over a band. Bo Scarborough rushed for 812 yards and 11 touchdowns, and Josh Jacobs rushed for 564 yards and 4 touchdowns. Point being, the common theme is none of those guys that stepped up, they didn't ask Miles Sanders to be Saquon Barkley. They didn't ask Bryce Love to be Christian McCaffrey, and they didn't ask Bo Scarborough, Damian Harris, and Josh Jacobs to be Derrick Henry. In the same light that Notre Dame's running back room and Jaywan Sider and Mike Denbrock should not ask Aeneas Williams and Keedron Young and Nolan James and Javian Osborne and Jonas Walton to go be Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price.
Right, because our point isn't that, well, I mean, it was how do you replace Christian McCaffrey? But Christian McCaffrey was not an anomaly at Stanford. He was the best of them all. But that started back in 2009 with Toby Gerhart. And then they replaced him with Stephen Taylor, who has 3 straight 1,000-yard seasons. He gets replaced by Tyler Gaffney, who rushes for 1,700 yards. Then there was like one in between not great year. And then welcome Christian McCaffrey to the world of college football. And then he leaves, and like you mentioned, Bryce Love goes for over 2,000 yards. That's the expectation that people had for Stanford at the time. It didn't matter who they put in at running back. By the time they got to Bryce Love, nobody was shocked that Bryce Love had a breakout year. Maybe they were shocked at how big of a breakout he had, but it was kind of like, well, guys, it doesn't matter who Stanford puts in. It was like that at Alabama under Nick Saban. It doesn't matter who Alabama puts in a running back, guys. Who cares if they lose a guy? They're going to have some other stud step in and replace him. And that's where I think Notre Dame has earned that right, because we're not talking about like a couple good stretches. We're talking about going back to 2015. They've had those type of guys. So again, I think the conversation needs to be, Trevor, is this is not about replacing Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price. We as fans need to just get rid of that conversation because they're not going to. You're not going to have somebody there that's as good as those guys. The question is, can you have guys at that position that can play at a high level and be part of a championship team? And that's the conversation. So the reality is if we can remove Jeremiah and Jadarian from the conversation and just focus on the room, you say, well, this is a talented room. But we can't get into the habit of, well, Jeremiah would have done this, Jadarian would have done that, because nobody in college football is going to have guys that can do what Jeremiah and Jadarian did. I don't care Ole Miss, and hopefully Ahmed Hardy can come back healthy and play it in Missouri. But like, they're not doing the things that Jeremiah and Jadarian did. They're not. And what we're going to find out, in my opinion, is if he stays healthy, I believe we're going to look back and be like, I cannot believe the Seahawks got him at 32. I can't believe he fell all the way to 32. That's what Notre Dame lost. So it's about evaluating for their impact in this offense, not what they did before. And a part of that falls on the coaches, Trevor, is the players can't be the players can't worry about, hey, Aeneas, I don't want to hear the words Jeremiah Love or Jadarian Price come out of your mouth, other than they were my boys. You're not Jeremiah. Not only are you not as good as he is, but you're a different type of player. Same with Kedron, same with Javion, same with Jonas, same with Notre Dame can't be looking for the next Jeremiah Love. They need to be looking for the best version of Aeneas Williams or Kedron Young or Javion Osborne or Jonas Walton or Nolan James or the guys that come in. That's the key. Same thing with us coaches. And then for the coaches, it's about, okay, not, well, this is what we did last year, so let's try to get these guys to do that. It's what are the strengths of the guys that earn the roles in the rotation this year? And then build your run game around them, and then what the O-linemen do well. And if they're kind of good at it all, then sure, focus on the offensive line. But don't just say, hey, we killed it with mid-zone the last 2 years, so we're going to run mid-zone all day again the next 2 years, even though that's not the bread and butter for Aeneas or Kedron. Hypothetically, I'm just using that as an example. That's going to be the key for them, is don't ask them to then be Jeremiah and Jadarian. Build the offense around what they do well. If it happens to be the same play, so be it, but don't force the issue. Force the run game to fit what they do. I think that's going to be a big part of whether or not the running backs can be successful. Because if you ask them to be Jeremiah and Jadarian, they will fail. They will not be as good as they need to be and as good as they can be.
Without a doubt, it comes back to coaching what you have. And that's something that we talk about on this channel all the time. And what you have is a stable of very, very, very talented running backs. Notre Dame is still one of the favorites to win the national title on FanDuel, despite losing Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price, because I think they have a good understanding of what they have coming back. They have a running back in Aeneas Williams coming back who averaged 9.3 yards a carry last season, and it's not because he had 2 carries for 22 yards. That's not why. I'm sure my math is off there because I think that comes out to 11 yards per carry, but you guys get the point. You know, like that's where we're at. And they're able to evaluate this roster for what it is, and that's something that the coaching staff has to do. That's something that us as fans have to do. It's just, can these guys play to the standard of the Notre Dame running back room, not to just the next generational level that Love and Price took it to? And I'm with you. And where that conversation has to start, Brian, is with Aeneas Williams. He's coming back. He's waited his time. He was a major player on this team in 2024 as a true freshman. You know, with Jabron Payne going down with his injury, he stepped in to be the primary third down guy. At the start of the season, he was kind of rotating back and forth with Devin Ford in 24, but then Aeneas quickly took over, and then the culmination of his season is what we saw in the Orange Bowl. Have a massive catch for a wheel route that ignited the offense in the second half, followed that up with a 16-yard rush into the red zone, set up a Riley Leonard rushing touchdown. So he's been playing on big stages before. It's not just seeing him in mop-up duty come in and rip off a big run against the team's second-team defense. This past season, we saw him come in against Stanford when Jeremiah Love went down and he was taking first-team reps. Very effective running back there. This is kind of where you have to start with the state of Notre Dame's running back room right now. It's Aeneas Williams, and the biggest goal for him right now is he needs to get healthy and stay healthy.
Yes. Now, the good news is there were no setbacks this year. He was able to get work running behind the offensive line. Now, not being tackled, but he could work on the timing and the technique and things like that. That's why I think they forced the issue a little bit in the spring game with him, because it wasn't a full-blown type of deal. So you could kind of get that work in. But look, he hasn't had. When we say this, it's more about recovering from this injury that he's been dealing with since fall camp. I mean, his second practice we were at. I don't think it was the first one. I don't remember the first one. It may have been, but like it was the second practice we went to where I saw he had the big brace on his arm. This has been something he's been dealing with for a little bit. So it's not like he's got a history of injuries. This kid had over 4,000 rushing yards and over 2,000 receiving yards in high school. He didn't miss a lot of time. You know what I mean? It's more of sometimes it's only one injury. Terrell Davis had one injury in his career. That's it. One significant injury in his career. And it basically, he was never the same after that. So it's more about just getting him back from this injury and then hoping that other things don't pop up as he becomes a full-time guy. I think the other question with Aeneas Williams is he capable of being the guy? And when we break down his game, Trevor, I think that's the question we have to have. We have to ask. We know that he can be a very good part of a rotation and make big plays in big moments. We've seen it. Like the last two games where Aeneas Williams has had to step in and play an important role were really the Orange Bowl and the Stanford game last year. In the Stanford game, he steps in, has 10 carries, 80-something yards, and then early in the game catches a wheel route for a big play. Because he didn't do as much against Ohio State as he did against Penn State. He was just basically pass blocking in that game. So we've seen him on that stage, Trevor, and he's performed well. But it's one thing to do it as a backup or to step into that role. It's another thing to be the guy where every week you're who we're building our run game around, and you are the focus of the defense when it comes to the run game. Can he handle that load and then make it through a 15-game season, 16-game season, and be healthy and do that? That's what we don't know. I actually think his game is suited to be a lead back. I think he's a very well-built young running back. It's hard to get a clean shot on him. Even when it looks like you're getting a clean shot on him, you're not, because he's short and he's not as long torso as Nolan James, whose legs are very short. But he's got the typical short guy build. Big thick legs, strong upper body, and you got to go really low to get a clean shot on him. He's a little bit more elusive than you think. He's not a wiggle guy. He's more of a smooth guy, and he's good at delivering punishment. I mean, just some of it was against backups, but like the touchdown they ran had against Syracuse, where the guy went high on him, and then he spun, and the guy just kind of got barely on his shoulder pads, and he bounces off and runs for a touchdown. Yeah, that was a backup player for a bad defense. But the principle behind it is going to be an issue for teams in that you're a 6'3" linebacker, 6'1" safety, and this little 5'9.5" kid goes low and spins on you, and you're grasping at air. So I think the skills are there. It's more about, can he hold up over the course of a season? And honestly, there's no way to answer that question. But I do think I'm willing to say, when you look at Aeneas Williams' game, he has the game of someone that can certainly be more than just a rotational player or a third down back. That he may end up being just a rotational player, but that'll more be because the next two or three are just too good. It's like the Audric Logan Diggs debate. Which one's better? Doesn't matter. They're both dudes. So let them use them both. Or and it's kind of that way. 2024 was more of that than 2025. Jeremiah just kind of took it to another level in 2025. But 24, Jeremiah was your guy, but you had basically 1A, 1B. Jeremiah gets hurt against USC, and Jadarian comes in, and as good as Jeremiah was against USC, if you look at how Jadarian played in the second quarter, he was better. He didn't have the highlight reel jump over somebody, but his touches and his yards per carry and his big plays were better than what Jeremiah was. And so it was 1A, 1B. If Aeneas is 1A, 1B and not 1, it's most likely because Keydron or Nolan or one of the freshmen has said, hey, I'm too good not to get a good chunk of the carries as well. But if it's just Aeneas and he's like the 1 and there's a 2, I think he's got the game to give you the power you need, to give you the big playability you need, and to give you the pass game production you need. He's a 3-down back in every way that we can define it right now, that we can know right now. The only thing we don't know is the one thing you never know until a guy does it or doesn't, which is, can he hold up over the course of an entire season?
And that's the interesting spot with every single running back that's going to be on this list. We don't know the answer to that. And that's really the first time that we've had to say that in quite some time. I mean, it really, if you break it down and think about it, in 2021, we knew that Kyron was going to be able to last for an entire season. We watched him do it during the COVID season in 2020. In 2022, it was a little bit of a question, but the rotation between Audric and Logan Diggs, it was like, okay, the way that that played out, they could last an entire season. Then obviously going into 23, we knew what that was going to look like. So there's no guy on the roster currently that we can sit here and confidently say that, hey, I have no questions about them being able to make it through the season. Same case is going to be for Kedron Young, the next guy. And he's somebody that we thought was going to emerge in 2025, but an unfortunate knee injury set him back. Yeah.
I mean, you watched the spring game last year and they were building, they were doing things with him that they were like, okay, they're going to make him a big part of. I mean, they were throwing him wheel routes in the spring game. He was their bulk ball carrier for, I think it was the blue team in that game. And then from what we heard about him in the summer and in the first couple of days of fall camp, he was going to be a factor last year. There's no question. Now he was going to be short yardage goal line, number 3 guy to take some of the load off, but the expectation, he was definitely going to help them last year. Now we got to ask ourselves, Trev, is he going to be that guy again? And when you're a bigger running back, I don't think that's as much as a given as it is maybe for a different type of back. So I think that's the big question with him is, where is he health wise? And is he going to have the juice that he had before the injury? Because that's the most underrated part of his game. He's a lot more explosive than people realized. He's a very explosive back. That's why I've said in the past, not last year's team, I'm talking about the upcoming team. I think if he's 100%, he's the most gifted running back they have on the roster. As just a pure runner. He's not nearly the all-around play. He can catch the ball, but he's not Aeneas and those guys Nolan is a pass catcher. But as far as a runner, I think he's the best pure runner on the roster.
Agreed completely, especially when fully healthy. The biggest question with Kedron Young is going to be, are we going to see the fully healthy version of him this year or in 2027? That's something that you always have to raise when you're talking about coming back from a knee injury. The tale is old as time. You're always better a year removed from it than the immediate year coming back from it. So be very interested to see what that looks like for him this season. But when he is fully healthy, his skill set's undeniable. I thought his role in the 2025 offense was going to be very similar to what Powers' Neal role was in the 2005 offense. Mm-hmm. Come in short yardage, goal line situations, the big bruiser, a little bit more like physical skills as a runner and as a pass catcher than what Powers' Neal was for the 2005 offense. But that's what I thought his role was going to be. But now it's a little bit different story for some of the younger talent that we're going to be talking about here soon. But that's my biggest question with Kedron is, what version of him do we see this year? Or is it going to be a conversation where it's like, yeah, he doesn't quite have the juice back right now, but next season we could be having that conversation?
And maybe it never comes back. I mean, that's a possibility. I got to tell you, Trev, I said this in our rundown, sort of our overview. He's the biggest wild card on offense. Like I don't care what position, what player. There's nobody on the roster, in my opinion, whose emergence could impact the offense greater of people that we don't already know. So I'm talking a healthy Jaden Greathouse, even Mylan Graham, Quincy Porter. They're all going to have an impact. But the reason that I say Kedron is because if Mylan doesn't step up, you have Jaden Greathouse and vice versa. And if they don't step up or get hurt, you've got Bubba Frazier, you've got Elijah Burris, you've got Micah Gilbert, you've got Cam Williams. And there's a lot of similar skill sets. When you look at, on the defensive line, well, if Keon Keeley doesn't step up, you've got Ronnie Dunham. There's guys you can turn to. Same thing at tight end. Well, if James Flanagan doesn't step up, you've got Cooper Flanagan and vice versa. There's different aspects of it. What makes Kedron unique is that there's nobody else like him. And that's kind of what I'm saying is like, there's nobody else that is a 200. I mean, he honestly should only be about 225, 230. I thought he was too big at 240. So just slim him down a little bit. There, 225, 230 pound running back that has great feet, the downhill power. I mean, if he's rolling, if he's healthy and focused and doing the things he needs to do on and off the field and locked in and growing his game and locked into being the best player he can be, if he gets rolling next season behind that big offensive line, that's going to have more impact on the pass game than anything else. And what I mean by that is if he's dominating and they're running duo and inside zone and mid zone with Kedron, and he's really just a bull, the RPO game is going to go crazy because the way you're going to have to defend him is straight downhill. I mean, you're going to have to come straight downhill to defend him. It's a very different way of defending this offense than you will with the two guys last year. Not better, not worse, just different. And it's very different than what you're going to do with Kedron, with Aeneas Williams. Now, they're going to run similar plays, but how they impact you is very different. Yes, Aeneas can run downhill, but Aeneas can go outside. He can catch the ball. He can run wheel routes. He can run sluggos. He can do all these type of things. But Kedron's that guy that he forces you to crowd the box if he's going, because there aren't a lot of linebackers that are just going to hit him and knock him down. It's going to be a lot of gang tackling and side tackling, which a lot of times requires numbers. And that's why I say is if he's healthy and he's really rocking and rolling downhill, he has a bigger impact than anybody else on the roster. Let me say, no, not bigger. He has a more unique impact than anybody else on the roster. Bigger is not the proper word. The most unique impact and how his emergence impacts other people. I also think that allows you to not have to find out if Aeneas can be a 15-touch guy every week. And I think that makes Aeneas, but now I don't know if Aeneas feels that way, but Kedron stepping up also means that now you can have Aeneas be more of a big play guy, a catch the ball guy, a pass pro guy, we're going to run some mid zone and some screens and some stuff because we're going to have Kedron as our horse. And so that's why I say he could have the most unique impact. He's the biggest wild card to have on this team, outside of Charles Jagasaw. That's the only other one that's in the conversation, in my opinion.
No, that's very true. Very true. Before we move on and talk about the future of running backs, there was one thing that I glossed over, which is my apologies here, but it was a big question, and it fits after we've talked about Aeneas and Kedron. But, what is the rotation going to look like this year? Is there going to be a top guy? Are there going to be top two guys? Or are we going to see more of a rotation?
And why? That's the other thing. The why is every bit is actually the bigger question in this than even the what. What will it be? My question is why? Because there's two reasons to have a deeper rotation. One, nobody's emerged as the guy. Well, why is that? Is it because nobody's really raised to that level, or two guys did, or three guys did? Notre Dame had a running back rotation the last 2 years. Is it because Jeremiah Love wasn't the guy, or was it because, he's the guy, but so is 24? And that's and that was the same issue in 2022. Wasn't that Audric couldn't be the guy, or that Logan couldn't be the guy? It's they had both earned that role, and so you're going to use both of them. And sometimes you were riding Logan, and sometimes you were riding Audric. There were games where Audric was like the man. And go back and watch the Clemson game, and it was both of them. But there were times Audric was the man. And then there was other games where Audric, I think it was UNLV game, Audric puts the ball on the ground again early in the game, and they yank him. And so then what do they do? I think Logan got like 20-some carries that game and went for over 100 yards. And that's just kind of how they were. And then there were games like South Carolina and games like Clemson where they're both kind of going off, and the offense was unstoppable on those days. So that's the question is, are they going with more of a rotation because nobody's really stepped up as the guy? Or is it more of Aeneas is just that dude and Kedron's that dude, and one of Nolan or Javion or Jonas also say, hey, I'm too good not to play? Or is it just because, they're all good players, but none of them are like the lead back right now, and so we've got to mix and match and find out how to use them the best? And we've had years like that too. 2013, 2014, there wasn't like that dude at running back. You had to kind of figure out, you had to use them all together, and nobody was really that, wow, what a star player. And so I think that's going to be the thing too, Trev. And of course, these two veterans we just talked about are going to be a big part of that. Are they rotating next year because they're both that good? Or are they rotating next year because neither of them have stepped up and proved to be capable of carrying the load by themselves? It's going to have a big say on how good this run game is and how good the backfield is.
Let's dive into the future of the running back room, Brian, here on the Irish Breakdown podcast, brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. We just got done talking about kind of the two heir apparents, I guess you could say, in Kedron Young and Aeneas Williams, two of the older guys in the room. But when we start talking about, is there going to be a top guy? Is there going to be a top two guys or a rotation? One of the other factors of that is the future of the running back room. And some of the future is currently here in the present. Due to the injuries with Kedron being out and with Aeneas not being able to go full contact in team drills, we got to see a lot of Nolan James and a lot of Jonas Walton this year throughout spring training, and we were impressed by a lot of what we saw from them. But it's similar to the conversation that we had around like the linebackers and Madden Framo. It's like, yes, it's the future, but some of the future is here right now, and we might get to see it this upcoming season. And so I think that's what makes this also a very interesting conversation compared to some of the other rooms where, defensive backs, we could talk about the future. And, we really liked what we saw from Aiden Pouncey. But I don't know what we're going to see from Aiden Pouncey in 2026. But I'm confident in saying I think to varying degrees, we're going to see Nolan James in 2026. Yeah. I don't know in what capacity, but that's what makes this conversation very interesting.
I think Nolan James, he's an interesting player, Trevor, because he's a redshirt freshman that's entering somewhat of a make or break season for himself. And it's an unfair situation that a lot of these guys are in. And I would say that that's somewhat true for Kedron Young as well. His is a little bit different because, who knows if he's going to be a guy that is even better in 2027 because he's back from health, from injury or whatever. But when I look at Nolan James Jr., he's in that kind of that middle child category where he's got the two talented kids in front of him, not more talented, just talented. And then he's got the two stud freshmen behind him that are, coming along. And he needs to be able to push the two guys in front of him, because if he's not pushing the two guys in front of him, then he's going to get passed up by the two guys behind him. And he's also in that middle child category where there is the emphasis on how good the veterans can be, and then the wishful optimism of the moment that the two younger guys become the guy, all while overlooking how good Nolan James can be. But I think Nolan James can be a very important part of the Notre Dame rotation. And I think someday he could be the starting running back at Notre Dame. He reminds me of everybody likes to compare Aeneas to Kyron Williams, and I understand it. In some ways, they're very similar build. They're both really good pass catchers. But I think when it comes to athletic style and athletic skill and game style, his game far more resembles what Kyron did than even what Aeneas does. And this is a kid that is a sophomore in high school, was a starting slot receiver and had over 50 catches. I mean, so there's an ability there too. He's a physical kid. He just has to learn to be a little bit more patient and trust the blocking a little bit more. He had some moments this spring where he showed that he could be that guy. Now it's about building on all that opportunity and taking your game to another level in the spring and in the summer and then the fall, because he can't afford to fall behind the veterans, because the more he falls behind them, the more the young guys gain on him. And so that's what I say is this is a make or break year for him. If he's still a year away from breaking out, he may not get that chance at Notre Dame because he might get passed up. But if he does break out, this is a kid that you're going to have a hard time not putting on the football field.
Without a doubt. And I think he showed a lot of that throughout the spring. Yeah, I think he's somebody that earned the right to be in that conversation, to see very meaningful minutes and not just, hey, we're beating the brakes off of Rice, to get on in there, show him what you could do. I think that he's earned the chance to compete for meaningful minutes because no rotation is set after spring, by and large. But that's going to be the biggest question for him. But you brought up his skill set and what he brings to the game. And I think that's a big reason as to why he has forced his way into this conversation. Things he has to improve on, being more patient as a runner, but he has a low center of gravity. He has a proven ability as a pass catcher. He had the best catch of the day, the first open practice that we were able to go to. Best catch of the day, but ahead of any wide receiver, any DB. He was running I think it was an angle route, and he was just able to stop in his tracks, reach behind him with one paw, bring it in, and continue running. I mean, it was a very, very athletic catch.
He did that again on a corner route, Trev.
Yep.
Like he had two of those catches. Yeah, he can catch the football. And he did it like you'd expect a 6'2" receiver with big hands to do.
Yep.
It wasn't like cupped. It was like snatched out of the air.
Yeah. Yeah, without a doubt. He has the skill set to be able to do it. Biggest thing for him is going to be working on his patience, knowing what, and that's not a knockout. Jeremiah Love had to work on that last year.
Yep.
That was something that he had to work on. And so Nolan James, as long as he can continue to work on that through summer workouts and into fall camp, he's going to be right in that conversation. But Brian, you brought up some of the young guys that are also going to be in contention in that conversation. And one of them we did get to see in bulk this spring, and that was Jonas Walton. And he's somebody that definitely took advantage of some of the other injuries in the room. And when you look at him, he just doesn't look like an early enrollee true freshman.
Yeah, agree. I think there's no doubt in my mind that Nolan James Jr. took advantage of the reps he got this spring to say, I deserve to be in this conversation in the fall. No question. But I think that so did Jonas Walton. I think he absolutely took advantage of those reps. And I think he needed them even more than what Javion Osborne would have if the roles were reversed, because Javion, to me, is a guy that I'm okay, and we'll get to him. Like, him missing spring doesn't bother me from a will he be ready to play standpoint. My only question is the health, and I'll explain why when we get there. But the big reason around it is Javion is a very natural running back. Jonas is not as far along as far as, like, he got by a lot on I'm just the best athlete on the field every time I step on the field. And he doesn't have, like, the same – like, when you watch Javion Osborne run, he's not only talented, but you're watching a kid that you're like, this is a high school kid. Like, this kid looks like Jadarian, like, now with the cuts he's making, and just a natural back. And so that's why I don't worry about him missing time. I just worry about whether he's going to be healthy or not. Jonas needed the work. He needed to learn. It's okay to just put your shoulder down and take two. You know, this is how timing is worked. This is what patience is. You just don't run downhill like a bowling ball and just kind of plow through four guys and then break off and use your 10-5 speed to hit a home run like you did in high school. You do that now, you're going to get lit up by Jay Nalsbury. You're going to get lit up by Jalen Sneed or by Adon Schuler or Tay Johnson or somebody else, right? Like, there's a level of set up the blocks, make your cut, be patient, and then turn off the afterburners. What you could see early on from Jonas is the athleticism is legit. He doesn't, and he's so weird looking, and I can't think of a way to say that in different. Like, when you look at him, Trev, he's kind of round. Like, he's got a thicker build, and he looks like a guy that you'd expect to be like this big hammerback. You know, you expect him to kind of be this physical downhill smasher. And then you're like, dude, he's not that at all. He's like super quick. He's got great feet, and he is explosive. I mean, he's the most explosive running back on the roster. I don't know that it's all that close because he's just got legit big-time speed, but he doesn't look – even then, when he's running real fast, he got these little short strides. He's just going like 100 miles an hour, dude. He's just cooking. But he's not the natural technician, the natural runner. And by the end of spring, he looked a lot more like he was getting that. That's how Jeremiah was coming into high school. I wrote about this in Jeremiah's evaluation, where Jeremiah has a chance to be a star, but he's still learning how to be a running back. And that was true as a freshman. We kept talking about it. Dude, he gets downhill way too fast. He doesn't read anything. He's just going and hitting a hole and then making people miss. He's got to be patient. He's got to let things happen. And even to a degree, early this season, we were kind of talking about that. Because I think for Jeremiah in this case, it wasn't trying to be a running back. It was, I'm trying to go win the game every time I touch the ball. And I think some of that was some residual from the frustration from the opener against Miami, where he wasn't getting the ball and he wanted to make up for it. It's just like, dude, like, relax, let it come to you. And as he got more patient, he was unstoppable. With Jonas, it's more of because he's where Jeremiah was as a freshman. Like, Jadarian Price showed up at Notre Dame like with the mind and game of a junior in high school or college. That's how Javion will be. Now, you got to learn the offense and all that, but as far as like your skill, your feel for the position, your technical prowess, you know, how to read and set up blocks, he was a vet. That's why he, as good as the 2022 running backs were, we talked about, if Jadarian doesn't get hurt, he's starting over both of them. Imagine how good that running back room would have been. But Javion's more like Jadarian. Jonas is more like Jeremiah in that he is still learning the position. But the more he got comfortable, Trev, the more you're like, that's going to be a dude. He's got that skill. And that's why I say the spring was huge for him, because he needed all those reps. He needed all those bad reads and all those misses and all those type of things, because once the technical part of the game, the feel for the game catches up to the God-given talent, he's got big time ability. He's basically like Audric Estime with a lot more speed. You know what I mean? Like, that's kind of, because Audric wasn't a hammerback either. Even though he was built like one, Audric wanted to make people miss and be elusive and hurdle over people and stuff like that. You know, like Jonas is kind of like Audric, but if Audric ran to 10.5, you know, instead of 11. And that's kind of what he brings to the table. But I felt coming out of high school that Jonas was going to need time. I didn't think he was going to help as a freshman. That's thinking that everyone is going to be there except for Kedron. When you see Aeneas out and you see Javion out, I think Jonas, that experience sped up his development a lot. To now it's like he's going to be a factor in the fall. He may or may not get in the rotation, but he's going to be looked at as a guy like, let's see if 20 can be that guy. And I don't want to say that. I feel like I'm putting too much hype on him, and I don't want to do that. But if there's a time in 2026 where Jonas Walton is your lead back, I won't be shocked. Not that I'm expecting or predicting it, but like, he's got that kind of ability. It wouldn't shock me if that happened because of how good he is, not because of anything negative about those other guys, but combined with Audric's injury or Kedron's injury, I think that's an opportunity for that to happen if he keeps working and getting better.
Nor would I be concerned if that happened because of the skill set that he brings to the table. I'm very much looking for, I mean, we might not even have to wait that long to see him get onto the field. You know what I'm saying? Like, if what FanDuel thinks is going to happen in Notre Dame season opener holds true and they win or are up at some point by 19.5 points in the season opener, we could see him then. That wouldn't surprise me, because I don't know if he's going to be a 5-year player at Notre Dame. Based on his skill set, I wouldn't say that. You know, same could be said for the next guy in the freshman running back class, Javion Osborne. Him, it's a little bit different because he's coming off of an injury. And the biggest question with him is when we're going to see him. That's kind of where you have to start with Javion, is when. And I'll be very interested to see when that's going to be.
Now, the good news for Javion is he, I don't think, will need as much time once he's healthy. I think the big question for him is, when's he going to get healthy? He's been dealing with his hand issue for a couple of years. If you remember, one of my criticisms of him back in 2024 was carries the ball in only one hand, and that's a big pet peeve of mine for running backs. Well, come to find out, having a chance to speak with his dad, it was because the other hand was injured. So it was harder for him to put the ball in there. He couldn't get as good of a grip on the football. And if that's the case, then freaking hold it in one hand. Because if you can't get a good grip on the football, I don't care about your stiff arm, because you're going to get it knocked out anyway. And so you get that dealt with. They had to take some people. Did he hurt his knee? No, they took some stuff out of his knee to put into his wrist or hand to fix it. So there's always that question of, will we see the dude we saw in high school with Javion? That's a legitimate question. If he proves to be that guy again, then I think he could quickly rise, because he was an absolute stud in high school. I mean, tremendous feel for the game. This is a kid that rushed for over 6,500 yards in Texas, like big boy Texas. This is a kid that had over 100 career rushing touchdowns and had over two different seasons with over 2,000 yards. Now, part of that is, okay, that's a lot of wear and tear for a kid coming out of high school. But if you watch him play, you'd realize he wasn't getting hit a lot. There's a lot of times when he gained yards, he was going out of bounds or going into the end zone in his career. So there were a lot of those carries that where he wasn't getting popped. But still, the point is still, Trevor, you can't dismiss the fact that's a lot of tread on them tires already. And then he comes in with the injury, and you're like, okay, what is he going to be? So I think before we get into too much of that conversation needs to be had. Is will he be able to be that every down back? Will he be healthy enough to be that back? He's got if he becomes that guy, the tools are there for him to be that. There's no question. He's got all the talent in the world. Great vision, very explosive. We talked about this when we broke his film down. His jump cut is absurd.
Yeah, I think he now replaces Jadarian Price as having the best lateral cutting ability on the roster.
And not all that close.
No.
If he's the guy he was in high school.
Agreed.
Right. Because it's just one of those things that translates. He can go from A gap to backside C gap like that. And that's not Jeremiah could do that, but he's not nearly as good as Jadarian was at that. And Javion has that ability. He really does. He's a natural runner. It can be lazy, but that's why it's so hard not to compare him to Jadarian. They both had black and yellow uniforms. They both played in Texas. They're both like 5'9.5". Neither of them are home run hitters with speed, meaning they're not 4.3, low 4.4 guys. They're more 4.58 or 4.48, 4.5 guys. But they're home run hitters, but not because wow, look at the 4.3 speed. They're just, but whatever they are, if they're a 4.49, they're a 4.49 in step one. And it's the great vision and the feel for the game and the jump cutting ability. And like I said, they're built the same, and they both had black and yellow uniforms. It was almost like deja vu watching Javion run and thinking of Jadarian. And so I don't think he's going to really suffer much from missing the spring, just because of the type of back he is. And honestly, in some ways, I think not being taken the pounding this spring might be good for him, because he had a major workload as a senior. He had 300 touches as a senior, close to. I mean, look, he had 250 carries. He had 10 catches. So he had 260 touches last year in only 12 games. That's a lot of touches. And then he also had over 200 carries as a sophomore. So he's going to come to Notre Dame with over 700 career carries. A spring where he got to heal up, get the hand healed, learn the mental part of the game, learn the offense, and let his body rest. Sometimes, Trev, may not be a bad thing for you, a kid like him. And so, he's behind, but I just really don't think that he's going to need that time to get caught up. I think what may take some time for him, and where he might need more time, is fully getting his body healed up. How long will that take? Because you don't want to rush him back, and then he gets hurt. He hurts the hand again, and this just becomes a reoccurring problem. Now he's got to miss his freshman year because he's got to get another surgery on that hand. Let him take his time. You've got older backs. There's no need to rush Javion back. Now, he may not want to hear that, but that's what I would be very cautious with him, because the big thing for Javion is get him healthy, whether that's his freshman year or his sophomore year. Get him healthy to where this hand thing is behind him. Because when that moment comes, he's going to be a factor. And there may come a day when him and Jay Jonas are the two are a better version of what we saw in 2022. That day could be here. And we'll talk about the freshman class, the 27 class as well. But if there comes a day where the running back room looks like the 2022 running back room, imagine Audric and Logan with speed. That's what this group is. So now we're talking about a couple 1,000-yard rushers. That wouldn't shock me at all. And that's what excites me about the future is you've got the junior duo, 1-2 punch in the junior class, and then Nolan James. So you could have a 1-2 punch there. You've got the 2 stud freshmen. And then, of course, you've got the 2 kids that we're going to talk about in a second. When you talk about the future, Trev, if we just talked about the Notre Dame running back room with Aeneas Williams, Kedron Young, and Nolan James Jr., I'm excited about that trio. There's not a lot of teams that have that kind of talent in their 3-man duo. There are some. What makes it different is when you add those 2 freshmen into the mix, the present and the future becomes very exciting for Notre Dame running back. And the scary thing is they're just getting started, because the 2 freshmen have really not even got to their first fall, but they're already loading up in future classes.
Yeah, they are. I mean, when you start talking about what they're bringing in the 2027 class, it's another reason why the running back room conversation is a little bit different, because in a lot of the other state of the program shows we talk about, now it's about closing and this is who's left on the board. The running back room has been closed for what, a month and a half, darn near. Mm-hmm. I mean, we're talking about Lathan Wissington and Isaiah Rogers, who have both been committed for quite some time.
They were both committed. It's been over a month. They visited for that March 21st recruiting weekend, And even though Isaiah didn't go public till the next week, they were both committed within days of that visit.
Yeah, so we're going on almost 2 months of them being in this class, but we're talking about two very, very highly talented kids. And Notre Dame sticking with the recipe of bringing in two running backs in a class to maintain that class level duo. And again, not something that you absolutely need. Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price were a part of two different classes. But Lathan Wissington and Isaiah Rogers are two very, very talented kids. To your point, Brian, there's no signs of Notre Dame slowing down anytime soon at the running back spot.
Yeah, there's no slowing down. There's no slowing down at all. I think Lathan Wissington is the most he is by far the most underrated player in this class.
Yeah.
I mean, he's barely ranked in the top 200. I don't think any. I think does 247 still have him as a 3-star? Let me go look at this real quick. When he committed, he was just inside the top 200 by On3, and he was not in the top 250, the ESPN 300. Now he's still ranked about the same spot on On3, the On3 Rivals ranking, but ESPN did jump him into the top 200. He's now 187. He's still a 3-star on 247, which again I think is absolutely just speaks volumes about their ability to evaluate players. But we really don't want to get into that today. We're talking about a kid that played big boy football in Texas. We're talking about a young man that's 6 foot, 205 pounds. That as a junior in high school last year, again, playing at a big level of football, rushed for 1,502 yards and 24 touchdowns. He only carried the ball 165 times, averaged 9.1 yards per carry. Absolutely dynamic back, Trev. And he had his most statistically impressive game, I believe, was a playoff game where he had 237 yards, but that was it. There's not like a couple 300-yard games that pad his stats. He's 134. First game of the year, he runs for 76 yards on 7 carries. The next game, 134 yards on 5 carries. 147 on 15 carries. 136 on 17. Next game, a little bit tougher for him. 79 yards on 21 carries. Still has 2 touchdowns, 3 catches in the game. And then next game, 186 yards on 20 carries, 175 yards on 22 carries, 135 yards on 17 carries, 100 yards on 6 carries. 237 yards on 16 carries. And then in the playoff loss, he had 97 on 19. And that was the only game all year he didn't go. He went without a touchdown. But this is a kid that just consistently is a dominant player. And then, of course, is a monster in the kick return game as well. Had a 99-yard kick return for a touchdown last year as well on a ball that I believe got muffed that he then picked up and ran back for a touchdown. And to make you more excited about the prospect he can be, he goes out there. Somebody just said he runs a 10.54 100-meter dash. You're working with old data, my friend. About a month ago, 3 weeks ago, he went out and ran a 10.43 at a track meet. Got that verified. Had somebody from his high school, because I say, hey, look, that's what is reported. I don't know for a fact. Had somebody from his high school was kind enough to send me a screenshot of the board, like the leaderboard at the track meet. And showed that he ran the 10.43, and so he's absolutely cooking. And you're talking about a guy that's doing that at 6 foot, 205 pounds, and you understand why he's good. Now, look, track speed's one thing, Trev, and that's all great. But the reason that we're excited about him is not because he's got track speed. The reason we're excited about him is because he's a guy that knows how to play football. He's a powerful runner. He's got good vision. He's got good patience. He's a very unique running back. And a guy that has the ability to be a difference maker. He's not just a fast guy that you've got to teach how to play football. He's a guy that has the ability to be an outstanding special type of runner in the future. So I'm excited about what he's going to be able to do and what he's going to bring to the table.
Yeah, without a doubt. That was something that we talked about when we broke down his film. He's a good football player.
Mm-hmm.
He just happens to have elite track speed.
Right.
That's definitely a spot that you want to be in. Very excited for the future of that room. That is
Isaiah Rogers is similar. Isaiah's been the best time I've seen from him, like reported officially, like an official time, is a 10.7, which is still pretty good. But there's reports that he's run a 10.5 this spring as well. And so, like I said, that's moving pretty good as well. So you're bringing in two kids that are he's also 5'10", 205 pounds. This is a kid also that has a lot of potential as a runner on the track. But when you look at him as a football player, this is a kid that has like we talked about, similarly has the big time home run speed as well from what we've seen. So it's hard not to get excited about what these guys are bringing to the table. There's a lot of ability here, Trev. A lot of ability. And Isaiah's a little bit more of, he's still learning the position a little bit more because he's just so talented that I don't think he realizes how much of his game is still missing because he's so much better than everybody else he plays. But the tools are there. He can cut. He's explosive. He can catch the ball. And there's a lot to bring to the table, man. A lot to bring to the table.
Brian, to take us home here on the Irish Breakdown podcast, brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel, we have a daily mailbag to take us the rest of the way. And we've covered a lot of different topics today. This is kind of more of a free-range mailbag. You want to ask about running backs, you want to ask about recruiting, ask away. We already have a lot of questions started in the chat. If this does happen to be your first daily mailbag, you can put MB for mailbag or a mailbox emoji. It lets us know to set your question aside. And as always, super chats do get bumped up to the top.
Yeah, and any questions that are geared towards like running backs or recruiting will also kind of get pushed to the top as well. Let's start things off with our guy UT Irish 55 with a super chat.
Appreciate the super chat, Drew. Can you discuss the body and game types when it comes to running back recruiting? Is it fair to say that not at running back, body and game fit for Notre Dame's offense, and that's why we don't go after some of these five-star running backs on the board, or am I wrong?
I would say you're wrong. You're looking for reasons why they're not going after the five-star guys. Well, number one, they went after one of them. And that would be obviously Keemon Spell, but it's more so, I don't think they look at five-star guys and say that guy doesn't fit as much as they look at all the running backs and say, who do we think are the best players? And then let's go after those guys. I mean, a big reason why they went after Lathan Wisington after missing out on Keemon Spell and really kind of they turned to him before they were going to lose Keemon, but like Keemon Spell was the guy that Jaywan Sider wanted in his class, not necessarily because he's better than Lathan Wisington. There's people I know that think Lathan is better than Keemon Spell, but it's more so like he had already got Keemon to commit to him when he was at Penn State, and then they were very close to getting him to commit at Notre Dame. Although I just kind of always felt like there was something missing. Like I think it was always more about, it wasn't Notre Dame that he loved. It was more so Jaywan Sider. At the end of the day, the Notre Dame aspect of it, I just don't think is what he wanted to do. And I don't know that Notre Dame was willing to pay the amount of money you would have needed to get him. Just didn't make sense to do so. So it wasn't like, well, we get missed on that five-star, so let's go look at somebody who's not as good. It's more so that they just evaluated Lathan Wisington and Isaiah Rodgers as those guys. Same thing with last year. No, Javian Osborne and Jonas Walton weren't ranked as high as other backs, but I've said this before, that's more of a problem with the rankings than it is Notre Dame intentionally not going for certain five stars. Look, I've said this. I said it at the time. I'll say it now. Javian Osborne was one of the 5 best running backs in the country last year, and Jonas Walton wasn't far behind him. And I don't care what the rankings say. I had the same argument with people about Jadarian Price. I was just as intent on him. I told it's the top 100 running back. I don't care what anybody says. Well, he's not this, he's not that. He didn't go to this camp, didn't go to that camp. Nobody ranked him in the top 100. But yet he was a number 32 overall draft pick, number 2 running back taken. So that's more of what it is, Drew. It's that those are the guys, they view them as impact players. They don't get into the 5-star, 4-star type of thing, top 100 or whatever. So is this guy an impact player in our offense? And they viewed Javion and Jonas as that player. And the current staff obviously views Lathan and Isaiah Rodgers as that kind of player. Guys, they could have waited on those 2 guys, and there were higher ranked backs on the board, but they didn't like those guys as much as the 2 guys they took. That's just a fact. But if Keemon Spell was a Notre Dame fit and wanted to be at Notre Dame, they would have taken him. I think Lathan is a very similar back to Keemon Spell. He's a little faster. I think Keemon's a little bit twitchier in some of his cuts. Both extremely talented backs, and that's how the staff saw it. It wasn't, well, let's not go for a 5-star for insert reason. It's who they think are the best backs in the country. And I don't think Notre Dame has a body game fit as much because there's enough versatility in Mike Denbrock's offense where he can build around whatever he wants. I mean, he's had very different running backs in his tenure. I mean, CJ Prosise was a very different back than Josh Adams. He was an elusive, make you miss kind of guy, where Josh was a one cut and go kind of guy. And then you look at, some of the backs he had at LSU and you compare him to Jeremiah and Jadarian and you look at the guys they're recruiting now, I don't think they're recruiting a bunch of cookie cutters. So I just think they're looking for guys that can be impact players. So I don't think it's about fit or body. I think it's about they are getting the guys they think are the best guys. And I don't think they give a rip what On 3 or what 247 or ESPN thinks about those players. Neither do I, and neither should any of you. I'll tell you right now, I don't care what Lathan Wissington's ranking is. That's a dude. And I said that about him before we had any idea that he was going to come to Notre Dame. First time Sean Davis watched this film, he was like, B. It hits me up, B. You got to watch this Lathan Wissington kid they just offered. I'm like, all right, cool. I'll check it out. I'm like, why did they not offer him sooner? This guy's a dog. First time you watch him. I had no idea if they had a shot at him. So I don't put a lot of stock in rankings for running backs or really any position. There's one position who I care about analyst ranking. And 2, snappers and kickers. And I'm dead serious because I don't know enough about those positions to argue with Rubio or Cole's rankings. I don't. So and they're pretty good. They're good at what they do. So I put a level of trust into what they do because I can't evaluate that. I don't care what the other national rankings say or do.
No, I'm with you. And Drew, I wouldn't put too much salt into who's the 5-star. Jeremiah Love on 247 Sports was the 5th best running back in the 2023 class.
And that's only where he finished. He went up.
Yeah. Like I don't know if any of us would have traded Jeremiah Love for Quentin Joyner, Justice Haynes, Reuben Owens, or CJ Baxter.
Yeah. That's a fact. That is an absolute fact. Because what was his over? He was ranked as the number 96 player in the country by 247 Sports. The number 3 player in the state of Missouri. You know what I mean? So when he committed to Notre Dame, I mean, he signed in 23. So when he committed to Notre Dame, he was in the 149. He ends up going up to 87, then drops down to 96. So he commits to Notre Dame, rises up to 87, and then drops down to 96 in a year in which his last game was a 300-yard performance in the state championship game. So again, I do not care what they think about him or anybody else. Never have, never will, and I would encourage you guys not to either. It's just a tool. That's all it is. It's a tool to use to help you evaluate. That's all it should be. Just one little data point. Got a super sticker from Rodney Hopkins. Thank you so much, Rodney. We appreciate you. Now we have a super chat from ND Milton fan.
Appreciate the super chat. Why are interior defensive linemen premium positions, but the same is not true on the offensive line? And what makes Joe Rudolph such a good recruiter?
I'll go backwards first. I think when it makes a good recruiter is I think players view him as being honest. He builds good relationships. He will talk to kids about things beyond just football. It's not just football all the time. He wants to get to know kids. He puts in the work to build that relationship, gets to know mom and dad, gets to know the young man, and knows how to sell. I think he's also done a pretty good job of kind of laying out, here's what my vision is for developing you, and here's how we can use you, and here's your fit, and those type of things. I think sometimes he's not patient enough with recruits. That's almost cost him a couple times. I won't get into specifics, maybe at a tailgate one of these days. I mean, his lack of patience almost cost him a couple studs since he's got here. But at the end of the day, he gets it done. And that's the thing is it's almost like, dude, trust yourself even more and stay in it. Stay in the fight for those kids until they tell you no. And, but I think there's a genuineness to Joe Rudolph that players like and appreciate. He's a hard coach, but he's not like some offensive line coaches. It's not better, not worse. It's just different. And then, of course, the track record is pretty solid as well. And I think, and of course, he also, this is the other thing too. There's one thing that helps offensive line coaches that recruit, and it's when you got that ND, right? When you got that monogram on your chest, because of what Harry Heastand did, that carries more weight than it would if Joe Rudolph walked in with a Pitt logo on or a Wisconsin logo on where he used to coach. That doesn't mean he wasn't still a good recruiter then. It's more about the access to, like, Joe Recruiter's not an any worse recruiter. Joe Rudolph's not an any worse recruiter now at Notre Dame than he was at Wisconsin, or any better, I should say. It's just that being at Notre Dame gets you access to Leighton Von Brandt and Albert Simeon and Olu Babolo and Grayson McHugh and Gerby Lambert and Will Black, where being at Wisconsin, you're not getting any of those guys. He didn't all of a sudden figure out how to recruit. He's always been a good recruiter. It's about maximizing where you are as a program. And at Notre Dame, you can go into those kids' homes and get them to sign with Notre Dame. And so I think that factors into it as well. Now, as far as why are interior defensive linemen premium positions, but the same is not true on the O-line, I don't know that I accept that premise. I mean, guards get paid a lot more money as well. I think a big reason why maybe guards aren't paid quite as much, either in high school or in college or in the NFL, is the skill set required to be a great guard is not always the same as it is to be a great tackle. I think there are fewer of those players, so I think part of it is they come more at a premium at tackle, where there's more good guards. The other factor, too, is there's still a level of, as a quarterback, I can attest to this, Trev can attest to this, if one of my linemen is going to get beat, I'd rather it be an interior guy or my right tackle than it is my left tackle, because I can see those coming. And if I get beat up the middle, yeah, it throws everything off. I'm not going to step up and throw the football if they just come free, but I can spin out and there's things that I can do. When a guy comes on my blind side, it's a little bit harder to kind of maneuver that, assuming I even see it. Now, that's been somewhat minimalized a little bit by the shotgun-heavy offenses, but it's still a very important thing. But it's like, look, man, you can't pay everybody the same. You can't pay everybody like a quarterback. So there comes a level of, hey, that's a very important position, but what positions have – where can I find more of those? I can take a pretty good tackle and turn him into a great guard. That's what a lot of coaches think. Where you're not going to take – and we've talked about this. You're not – a really good tackle who can't beat out the starting left tackle is not going to can move to guard and be really good. If your left guard gets beat out by a really good left guard, he's not going to then move out to left tackle. Like, so there's a greater premium just partly just because of supply demand. There's just more of those types of players than there is because of the skill sets not required is not as great. On the other side of the ball, defensive linemen tend to be more explosive athletically than offensive linemen. So guys that can do the things that they do on the defensive line, again, it's more at a premium to find those type of, it's a lot harder to find a David Fuller-Runshoe than it is to find a Ben Nichols. That doesn't mean Ben Nichols is not a really good football player. There's just a lot more 6'6", 320-pound kids who are athletic enough to play the O-line but have no chance at being defensive linemen at the next level. Because there's just a level of athleticism needed and explosiveness needed and twitchiness needed to thrive at that position than is needed on the offensive line. So, and then, of course, the other one is meant to go after the quarterback, one's meant to protect. And there's one fewer position that you have to pay, 4 versus 5. So something's got to give. So all those things factor into it.
Yeah, some of it comes down to that positional versatility too. I mean, if you, like you said, you laid out, if you recruit a high-level tackle, you can move him into guard. I'd say there's more offensive tackles that can move into guard than there are defensive ends that can move into defensive tackle. Like if Rodney Dunham, for whatever reason, needed to be kicked to the interior, he just doesn't have the frame to go be an interior defensive lineman. We've seen it. I mean, Christopher Burgess did it. Riley Mills did it throughout his career, but there's been more cases, in my opinion, on the offensive line than there has been that of the defensive line.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, somebody said we were talking about snappers, and Raymond Harden said that's why you have Vince on staff. The thing is, Vince only recently got good at that stuff. He didn't get good at that until his son started doing it, and then he had a passion in it. So, yeah. Somebody just said, I bet he's a smidge better recruiter now. Freeman and the staff demand it. I actually disagree. I think it's the opposite. You have to work harder at a place like Wisconsin. You have to work harder at a place like Pitt because you've got to find those gems. Where at Notre Dame, it's like, okay, he's a stud. Let me give him a call. It's a lot harder to find the next first-round draft pick at Wisconsin than it is to find the next first-round draft pick at Notre Dame. It just is. So I actually push back a little bit on that. I think people think, oh, it's harder at places like. No, I don't think it is harder to place like Notre Dame. I think it's harder to place like Pitt. It's harder to place like Wisconsin because you can find that gem, and then when Notre Dame comes calling, bye. Let me go find somebody else. So I don't think he's a smidge better. I think he has always been known as a pretty solid recruiter, but now he's walking in the door and he's got ND on his chest, and that matters. You think Mike Mickens was going out and finding top 100 players when he was at Cincinnati? No, he had to go work hard to find Sauce Gardner. There had to be an evaluation. He was some kid that, so I think it comes down to sometimes it's easier because I can just identify that, hey, that guy's really flipping good, and everybody wants him. Well, that's fine. You couldn't get him when you were at Cincinnati or Bowling Green. You could get him now when you're at Notre Dame.
I would say I agree. I would say that I would argue that closing is probably harder at Notre Dame than it would be. I think getting in the door is easier if you're at a place like Notre Dame compared to Pitt. But at Pitt, you're not having to close against Miami and A&M and Georgia, and at Notre Dame, you are.
Well, but you're still closing against comparable programs. You're closing against programs like you. So to me, it's kind of the same. But here's the difference: is when you're at Pitt, Notre Dame. Hey, look at UCLA. Put all this work into getting Jackson Hill and developing, and recruiting him, and then Notre Dame just. So when you're at Pitt in Wisconsin, you don't really close until they sign because the minute a Notre Dame, a Miami, and Alabama comes a calling, that kid's gone. It doesn't matter what you've done. There is not that for Notre Dame. Once you win him, there's no bigger program that's going to come calling. That's why you'll see an offensive lineman flip a lot.
Sure.
So I think there's give and take. Right? Like you're not going against bigger programs, but you're also not a bigger program. I think the hard part at a place like Notre Dame is sometimes can be what he just did with Jackson Hill. Wait a minute. You're Notre Dame. You're going to take a 3-star kid that has got 3 Power 4 offers? At Wisconsin, we're like, oh, what a great find. Like, you went out to Cali and found this kid that's got all this upside. What a great job, coach. At Notre Dame, we're like, you're going to take that kid when you've got that kid and that kid still out there? You know what I mean? So, it can be like, do I really want to take this chance? That's why I say you got to have some conviction when you go after an Anthony Knapp. Sure. Now, Anthony ended up being ranked high, but he wasn't when Notre Dame got him. You got to have some conviction when you go after a Jackson Hill, a Richie Flanagan, because they're going to be like, wait a minute, you took that guy when you could have gone and got this highly ranked guy? That can be a challenge. But my point more so is, Trevor, you got to be a great recruiter no matter what level you're at. It's just what changes is who are the players you're going after.
Sure.
But the process is still very similar. I think it gets easier at the bigger programs because there's less teams trying to poach you. And like when you it's like a food chain. When you're at Bowling Green, there's a whole lot more schools that are poaching you. You move up to Pitt, not as many schools trying to poach you, but there's still some big dogs. And you get to Notre Dame and Alabama, and you're like, once we get a kid, it's like, yeah, we're pretty set. There's not a lot. We've already beat those teams for it. Now the next team that could poach him is like, okay, he's a junior, and the NFL comes to call in. That's what makes it a challenging. So, yeah, it's part of the fun though too, man. To be honest with you, it's because like when I was recruiting at the D3 level, we didn't recruit early on. We didn't go after D3 kids. When I would work summer camps, I didn't want a D3 kid. I wanted the D2 kid. I wanted the kid that was good enough to play at the 1AA level and hope that we could put together a better financial aid package for him, or that those other schools were too stupid to offer him. And then knew of these 10 kids like that I'm recruiting, I'm hoping to just get one. And that's and then after you get through those guys, because they tend to go earlier, then we focus on sort of the typical D3 kids. Well, this guy's a great high school football player, but he's a 5'10", 205-pound linebacker. Where that's what the top teams do. That's what Mount does. It's like we're not going against a bunch of other OAC schools. We're going against Ohio Dominican. We're going against Dayton. We're going against Youngstown for these kids. And that's kind of what you got to do at that level. And it can be challenging, and you're going to get told no a lot more than you get told yes. But when you get that one yes, you got yourself a potential difference maker. But that's part of the game. It makes it kind of fun.
Most definitely. Super chat from John Benko. Appreciate you, John. Okay, fair enough. We don't have a Jeremiah or a Jadarian on the roster, but do we maybe have an Audric or a Kyron? I'm signing up for that.
Agree. And this is the whole thing is when we get past the point of comparing the current roster to Jeremiah and Jadarian, and you get to that point where it's like, okay, if I can look at these kids for who they are, you get excited about it. Trevor, you had a great comment, and I don't know that you said it during the show this time, but you said it, I think, a week or so ago. I'm trying to remember what it was about kind of speaking to this a little bit. Do you remember what it was? You said it like a week ago, and you said it again in our conversation today when you talk about like comparing the current group to that group. And I can't remember what it was, but it was really well stated. You said you wanted to say it again today, and I just can't remember what it was.
Oh, I mean, it was probably something along the line, like you have to play to the standard of the program, not to the standard of your like predecessors. Like I've said that multiple times.
Yeah. I don't think that was it, but it was really profound. It was so profound that neither of us can remember what it was. But it just speaks to the volumes of like, you have to look at these guys for who they are and not what they're replacing. And the more you start to look at them for what they are, you can get excited about it. But if all you're going to do is continue to look at them through the lens of what was, oh, that's what it was. This is the first time that we're not excited for the next. And Trevor's point was, yeah, in throughout Notre Dame fandom, it's always like, ooh, what about that next big time recruit? And you're always like, guys are good when they're juniors and seniors, but there's always like, okay, yeah, he was good, but I can't wait until. Yeah, this guy's good, but I can't wait until this quarterback takes over. And then it's I can't. With Jeremiah and Jadarian, it was kind of like they were so good that there's no next that you're waiting for them to leave so that the next can come on. That's what it was. I remembered what it was now. And that's what makes this unique and kind of exciting. Like look at the offensive line. They lose an NFL draft pick in Billy Schrouth, who would have gone higher if not for injuries. They lose a team captain in Emil Wagner, and we're like, good. You know, they're going to be even better there. I say that more crassly, but I'm just kind of making a point, you know. I think we all know that Billy Schrouth especially is going to be big shoes to fill, but, you know, you're moving Anthony Knapp in there, and he's just as good. That kind of, yeah, Emil's gone, but you're moving Gerby out there, that 5-star player. Those guys were so good, it's like there's no number 3 draft pick on the roster. I don't know that there's a number 32 overall draft pick on the roster. So it's the first time where you're not excited about what's next because of how good they were. And that's happened very rarely in Notre Dame. I think the only times that I can think of that's happened is really like Michael Floyd, you know, maybe because there in 2012, there was no Michael Floyd. But like when Golden left, we still got Michael Floyd. When Will Fuller left, it was like, yeah, but look who they got coming. They signed Javon, they got Equanimous St. Brown, and you signed Chase Claypool and Miles Boykin and Javon McKinley. And it's like, you know, they're going to be really good too. Even Quentin Nelson, it's like Harry had recruited so well. You're like, yeah, okay, he's gone, but they're going to put Aaron Banks in there. He's really good too. Now it's just kind of like they were so crazy. You know, I'll say Quentin was the other one. I'd say those two, Quentin and Jalen Smith, were the 3 where you're like, because like in Manti's last year, you'd sign Jalen, and Jalen was coming that next year. I'd say so. So the guys that I think were like this, and it's very few, is Michael Floyd, Quentin Nelson, and Jalen Smith. What makes this different is there's 2 of them. That's what makes this different, is there's 2 guys that were like that at a position where you only start 1. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. Look, John, and I absolutely get where you're coming from. We as fans love comps. Whenever we do a recruiting breakdown, the first question you get is, who is he like? And I think we as Notre Dame fans would greatly, greatly benefit from even staying away from we don't have a Jeremiah or a Jadarian, but we could have an Audric or a Kyron. I think we need to be focused on, no, they have an Aeneas and a Kedron and a Jonaz and a Javion and a Nolan.
Right.
Because Notre Dame's roster is in a place that it's so talented now that we're going to be playing this game a lot. I'm already seeing it starting to formulate when we're in the 2027 offseason. We might not have a Leonard Moore, but we could have a Cam Hart and we could have a Julian Love. It's like, hey, we need to get in the mindset of we don't have a Leonard Moore, but we have a Kari Adams and we have a Jaden Sanders and we have a Dallas Golden. Yeah. Exactly. Like that's
Zay
kind
Hassan
of the mindset.
Is going to be showing up next spring. Yes. Who also recently just ran a 10.5, by the way. Remember with Zay, when we evaluated his film, was like, the only thing I don't know that he has is like that elite speed. And then this spring in track, he's gone out and just been like, So he has elite speed now. It's like, all righty, that'll play. What was this? 10.53 was his most recent time.
Yeah, that'll play.
Yeah, that'll definitely play. And it wasn't like he was smoked the next guy who was a 10.67. So he was way out in front of the pack. Then he ran a 21.47 in the 200 meter dash. I'm actually going to go look at something. I want to see what his 200 meter track time is compared to Braden Lindsay. Because I remember Braden Lindsay had a great track time. He was a great track runner as well. Braden's, who was a great track guy, his best 200 meter dash was a 2:134. So he's slightly better than what Zay is. Who's it? 2:147. What did I say? 2:147, 21:47. I think is his best time. So yeah, that's pretty good. That's pretty good. And that'll play. That'll play. All right. Another super chat here from Zach Nichols.
Appreciate the super chat, Zach. Is UCLA working on a great Brian Kelly at Notre Dame?
I'm not quite sure how to take this comment, Zach, because part of me wants to say yes if you're meaning this in a complimentary manner. And if you are meaning it in a complimentary manner, meaning like, no, it doesn't work for Notre Dame, but that philosophy works really well at UCLA, sure. They're not able to get the studs. They're not going to go out and get very many Olus and David Fuller run shows if Notre Dame gets him, and they're not going to get Lathan Wissington. They're not going to get Champ Mons. They're not going to get the James Halters and the guys that Notre Dame is going, the Zay Hassans that we were just talking about. They're going to have to go, convince a kid like Khalil Terry that Notre Dame is kind of lukewarm on to come over there, because for them, that's a really good football player. They're going to have to find the Jackson Hills and then cross their fingers and wish upon a star that Notre Dame doesn't come calling for that kind of kid. And I think they're doing a really good job. Look, the Montana Tualolo kid that they got, Notre Dame would have taken him. And they did a great job of convincing him, stay home. Like you go to Notre Dame, you're playing on this really deep depth chart. You come here, you're a dog for us, and you get to play close to home, which was very important for Montana. So I think they're doing a good job. I do. I think he's putting a nice first class together, and they're just getting guys where I'm like, yeah, I wouldn't take him at Notre Dame right now. But does it make UCLA better? Absolutely, because you got to start there. You've got to find your that guy before you can get to that guy. And then that guy plays well enough to where you're able to recruit that next guy. And I think those things are very important. And I think Bob Chesney's doing a nice job there. I do. It's just, you have to understand this is going to happen. When you're good at evaluating, find those underrated guys, there's just a Notre Dame, a Texas, an Oregon is just they're going to find that kid too. And have room for them or have a need for them or whatever, and you're just going to lose some of those guys. That's why you got to find 3 of them in a class. But no, if you mean that question in a complimentary, like getting those under the radar kids, getting those program guys, things like that, he said he is meaning a compliment. Then yeah, if you mean it that way, then I agree with you. I think that's the kind of class early on. And then as you start winning with those kids, then you go try to land the bigger fish to put in with them while also still going after those players that you're getting. Those guys are always going to have to be a part of who you are at UCLA. And then it just hopes you can go get a Deshaun Foster, like that, a JJ Stokes, that next kind of caliber player, a Cade McNown, because of it's built on the backs of what these kids over here were. I think that's absolutely a big part of it. Yeah. So good stuff. Let's get it back up to the top.
From Andre Tonsel, do we still have the home run ability to take it to the house with the running backs on the roster? I believe we have running backs that have more catching run ability than we had last year.
I don't know that I agree with that. I think that I don't know that there's anyone that's going to be as good of a catch and run guy as Jeremiah Love. I think what you could find is a guy that maybe is a bit more of a bulk pass catcher than what Jeremiah was, and Aeneas Williams or Nolan James. But as far as bringing that, I don't know that I agree with that. Do they still have home run ability? Yes, they do. They don't have a Jeremiah Love speed guy on the roster, but not many people do. But Jadarian Price was a home run hitter, and they definitely have guys that can run somewhat comparable to him. Aeneas, I think in his career, what is it, Trev? He's got, let me see real quick, Aeneas Williams stats. He has something like, let me find it here real quick. it's like 40, 50 carries, 58 carries in 7 touchdowns. Like 3 of those are 50-plus yard touchdowns. 3 or 4 of them are like 50-plus yard touchdowns. He's already got 2 pass plays over 30 yards. He hasn't caught the ball a whole lot. And I mean, yeah, he's a big play guy. Kedron can be that. I mean, look at Audric. Audric was a guy. I mean, hits off a 70-yarder against. I mean, look at South Carolina again with Logan and what Logan and Audric did. Those guys are at the bottom of the depth chart right now in speed. Bottom of the depth chart. Audric estimate right now would be the slowest running back they have, most likely. And he could rip off big plays. So I don't think you need to be a 4.36 to be a home run hitter at running back. You have to have great vision. You have to have great burst. And then you have to have that ability to maintain that top speed for 50, 60 yards. I mean, Dexter Williams is a home run back at Notre Dame. Had a 97-yard career run. He ran a 4.54. You know, who's the other one? It was Kyron Williams was able to hit a lot of big plays. Was it first carry the Clemson game he had? Makes a guy miss, boom, 50-something yard touchdown. Remember that, Trev, in 2020?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I watched Tony Jones house a 75-yard touchdown run in the Camping World Bowl. Yeah. And with all due respect to Tony Jones, physically, he was closer to a fullback than he was Jeremiah Love speed-wise.
Yeah.
Like, it's
another,
again,
6'8", I think is what he ran. He was slightly faster than Audric.
Yeah, again, I go back to what we've talked about before. It's just going to look different. Their home run ability will be a lot of because of the offensive line. I don't know if there's a running back on the roster that's going to shake somebody on a wheel route, bring it in one-handed, and then run over a guy into the end zone. I don't know if any one of these running backs is going to spin out of a tackle in the backfield and then get wrapped around the waist and then get brought down, spun off the chest of a defender, get back up, and then house it from 54. Mm-hmm. But they still have home run ability. It'll just look different.
Agree. Got one from Salty, Virginia Peanuts. Here we go.
During Keemon Spell's recruitment, you, Brian, said that you had intel indicating that he would likely not be Irish. Can you share that intel? Did Sider misread Spell's interest?
No, not necessarily. I mean, part of that intel came from Notre Dame. And if I knew it, I'm pretty sure J1 Sider knew it. I think it was more about he just didn't want to give up. And I think that he was it took a little too long to give up. But I also understand why. I mean, you had already had this kid committed to you at another place, and you know the place you're at now is better. I understand, like, hey, just give me a little bit more time, I can get him. And it seemed like there was a time where he was close to committing, people, you know, to at least as we told Notre Dame. My whole thing is I just didn't buy it. I think he was caught. It was one of those things where I can tell when a kid is caught up in the moment. And if it was anybody else that he didn't already have that long 2-year relationship with, I don't know that he would have bought it either. And that's where it's like you can get lied to more easily, in my opinion, from somebody that you know, and than somebody that you don't. At least that's how I am. Maybe I should speak for myself. If I don't know you, I'm going to generally have a not overly trusting, I need to see it type of thing. But if we've been friends since the 2nd grade, I'm going to probably trust the things you tell me if that's the experience we've had. You've always been honest with me. We've got a great relationship. So if you're lying to me, you can get away with that more because I'm just going to kind of have a natural tendency to believe you what you're telling me. So that's why I kind of think, and not that he was lying to them. I think he genuinely was caught up in the moment and he was excited about Notre Dame and Jeremiah Love was having this great season and he's doing this, whatever at his games and stuff. But I just never felt when people told me what he was really looking for and who the people were that were driving his decision and what they were looking for, I just knew that it was never going to end with Notre Dame. Even if he committed to Notre Dame, he was not going to end up at Notre Dame. And that's just part of my experience having been covering this team for over a decade, where J1 Sider's still learning that a little bit because he's still kind of new here. So that's really what it was. But the Notre Dame staff, in my opinion, was not blind to that. I think J1 Sider a little bit was optimistic, but he eventually came around, and now we see what the class he put together.
Another one from Salty. Noah Roberts seems like a wide receiver trapped in a running back's body and position. If he was Irish, could Denbrock use him as a pass-catching specialist out of the backfield?
Sure. I get what you're saying, wide receiver trapped in a running back's body. I would say his game is kind of like Aeneas Williams in high school, where he's a legit pass catcher. But I could see a world in which he goes to Texas and eventually becomes a slot receiver. I could see that. But I think they like him at running back. And I think part of the reason they like him at running back is because they like a running back that can catch the football. And I think he'll fit really well there. Certainly they could have done that. Yeah. And Texas will as well.
From Justin ND Sniper, watching Nolan James high school film, he looks like a very slippery runner who breaks tackles. What would be a decent size weight for him at the college level to retain this without sacrificing speed?
I think he's there already.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know that. Again, I don't put a lot into, okay, this is the size and speed he has to be, because different players carry weight differently. And some guys carry it a lot better than others. Some guys, certain body types can be 510 pounds or 210 pounds and be able to move effectively. I was going to say 5'10", 210 pounds and said 510 pounds. Yeah, I don't know a lot of guys that can move well at 510 pounds, but you can be 5'10", 210 pounds and move great. And other guys get up to 5'10", 210 pounds and they lose that athleticism. But I think when you look at this right here, Trev, he's 5'10", 212. And you and I saw him up close and personal, and he is jacked up. I think he's right. I mean, he's bigger now than what Terrell Davis was when he played for the Broncos. Terrell Davis was like 5'10", 210 in his career at Notre Dame. So I think he's already built well enough to be that kind of guy and be able to take a pounding. I don't think he needs to. I think he just needs to maintain where he's at, just continue to – you can get stronger without getting bigger. And I think that's going to be the key for a lot of the younger backs. They don't need to put on a bunch of weight. They just need to get stronger.
Agreed. I think at 5'10", 212, he's bigger than what Jadarian was last year. Jadarian was like 209.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, Jeremiah Love was only 212 at the combine. And he was almost 6'1.5". Good question. I got one from Black Irish, our guy Chris.
With the new offensive line commitment, do we still have a need for a fourth? Keyword is need.
Yeah, I think he meant fifth. No, there's not a need for anybody else. There's a want. Now, I think where you could say need, I will say this. I still think there's a need for at least one more offensive lineman, maybe two, from the standpoint of they did take a couple projectable kids in this class. I think Richie Flanagan's one of those where he's going to need time. Richie's a really good football player, but he's like 260 pounds. He's going to need a lot of time to get the size and weight up to where he's not doing it too fast and then he gets slow. Because that's the thing is, you can gain 40 pounds and maintain your athleticism, but if you do it in one offseason and it's not natural, like Joe Alt just kind of blew up and it was more natural. Kyle Rudolph put on a lot of weight between his senior year and freshman year, and it was kind of natural, so he's able to maintain his explosiveness. You do it too fast and you're faster than your body is naturally going to put on that weight, then you're going to lose. That's where you get tight. That's where you lose flexibility and explosiveness. You got to be careful. So, yeah, they've got 4 kids committed right now. But I would argue that 2 of them are kind of projectable. And I have a tough time calling James Halter a project because he's a top 100 talent. But he's not going to – he couldn't step on the field right now and play because he's 275 pounds. So, like, 3 of your 4 physically are going to need at least a year, either technically or adding size. So I still say there's a need for a higher level of ceiling or floor. And I think that's what a Leighton Von Brandt and or an Albert Simeon would bring to the table.
Yeah.
So numbers wise, no, but from a skill set and an impact talent standpoint, I would say yes. Is that fair, Trev?
Yeah, I'm the same. I know we talked a lot on these recent commitment shows about how Notre Dame doesn't need any of their offensive linemen to be ready to play as a freshman, but at a position like this, you just never know. And it's always good to have that almost insurance policy of a Leighton Von Brandt or an Albert Simeon, who there's at least one guy in the class that could step onto the field the second they get onto campus.
Yep.
From ND Football, I like Jackson's size and aggressiveness, but he seemed a little slow moving to me. Am I incorrect? If he is it just a footwork issue? P.S. I trust the staff more than stars. I also trust the coaching staff more than star rankings, but I think with Jackson Hill, it goes a little bit farther than just like what your star ranking is. Because, again, also not all 3 stars are created the same. Jackson Hill's not the same 3-star that Leonard Moore was either. And so when I look at it, I don't think you are incorrect. One thing that we talked about during his recruitment was we saw a lot of like camp clips from him from this spring that he looks a little bit more nimble and light on his feet. Because you're not wrong. Based on the huddle film that was pulled up, he is very heavy on his feet. Like I won't lie to you. The first time I saw his film and I watched him on that one play where he pulled, I was like, that might be the slowest pull I've ever seen a Notre Dame recruit have in a game. It was very slow, very heavy footed. But again, still just a junior in high school. And there was clear improvement from his bend and athletic ability and ability to move laterally in some of these camp clips that we've seen than in the game. Now, with him, it's going to be okay, let's turn around and evaluate what he looks like in the fall during his senior year of high school to see if that will translate over or if it's just, we see it at the skilled position a lot. Sometimes you have people that are just camp warriors and he's able to move a little bit better because he doesn't have a helmet on and shoulder pads and the knee braces. And I mean, so there's a lot to keep an eye on there. I'm with you. I'll trust the staff on it because Joe Rudolph has shown he has the ability to go out and identify good talent at that level. But no, you're not incorrect. In the game film that you saw, in the highlight film that you saw, he was moving slowly.
Yeah, like look, I'll say this, Trev. He has not done enough at Notre Dame to where I have the, I don't want to say blind faith, but like the, okay, if Mike Mickens says something about a kid, I'm just going to take his word for it. He's not there yet, but he's definitely getting closer every year because of just the good evaluations that he's made. Nobody, to me, for me anyway, is a I believe him no matter what guy. But there does come a point in time where it's like, you know what? Like, hey man, this kid is this, and this, and we're going to call him out. But as far as saying like this is a mistake to take a kid or whatever, there's some coaches that just deserve the benefit of the doubt. And even if it doesn't work out for the kid, that doesn't then allow you to go back and say, see, this is what. Right. Not every kid's going to work out, because then you could say the same thing. Well, what about the 5-star kid that didn't work out? So I get what you're saying, but yeah, there's a lot to like. I think to back up Trev, it is more of a footwork issue than it is a lack of an athleticism issue. I do think that's a good kind of read into why that is the case.
From Trev's buy-sell hold glass. It's been a second since we've seen you in here, man. Good to see you back.
He apologized for that, I think, earlier in the show. He was like, hey, I'm going to, so we haven't been doing buy-sell holds the last few weeks. So shocker that a guy whose name is buy-sell hold glasses hasn't been here the last 2 weeks when we haven't been doing buy-sell holds. But hey, those will be back on Monday. Bang. We're going to bring the buy-sell hold back on Monday because we're wrapping up our state of the program stuff tomorrow.
From Trev's buy-sell hold glasses, how does the play calling change with the new running back room?
I think what you'll see is obviously a little bit of a look. I'll say this. This is why you need to be on the message boards. If you are, then you'll see the breakdown that I did in the film section, the IB film room section. I broke down what I think the run game is going to look like. So what it does is it doesn't change the play calling from what's on the call sheet. You're still going to run mid-zone, inside zone, duo, outside zone, and A-gap counter. What is going to change is what's the emphasis. Like if you have those 5 runs and, last year mid-zone, let's say, is like 50% of the runs, and then inside zone duo is like 80%, and then the rest of them are like some combination of them are like the 20%. Now it might be, in 2024, mid-zone, inside zone, inside zone duo was more of the 50 to 60% run. Mid-zone was more of a change of pace, big play type of thing, and you broke it down that way. It's like that. It's the same concepts, but the emphasis will be different based on the talent of the backs and the talent of the offensive line, because that's part of it too. Because if a running back is great at running outside zone, but you have a bunch of slow-footed alt linemen that can crush you on duo but can't reach a tight technique because they just don't have the athleticism, then you're not going to run a lot of outside zone unless you're an idiot. And you like minuses. You know what I mean? Like, I'm a big fan of negative plays. Like, unless you're that guy, then you're not going to run that a lot with a lot of slow, heavy-footed, offensive linemen. You're going to go more to a pin and pull, if you want to get outside. Or you're going to do things like with jets where you don't need your offensive linemen to be the primary blockers on an outside play because they can't. So there's a lot of things you do. So it's just it's the running back room, but it's also what are the linemen good at? That's a part of it as well. If they're not as good, like here's the deal. Let's say they run mid zone as much as they did last year. You're going to think, well, you're not going to be as good because last year was all about Jeremiah and Jadarian, and it was. But what if I were to say, well, yeah, but it's different this year because the current line with Knapp inside at guard and Gerby at tackle and Will Black at tackle, like this is a way more athletic offensive line, and they block mid zone better. Well, okay, then you're still going to run mid zone a lot, even though you may be built differently, or you may say, hey, look, we were a inside zone duo team last year because we had Rocco at guard and Billy at guard and Coogan at center, and they weren't real athletic guys, but they were maulers. And you may say that doesn't necessarily maybe not fit the back, but you can't run the stuff that fits the back because it has to fit the line. Or you may say, hey, listen, we're going to be doing more inside zone and duo this year. And this year, but the backs are good at it, but they're good at mid zone. But we got this 320 plus pound guys across the board that just move people. So the line plays a big role in this as well. And I think that's what's going to factor into why the run game could be just as effective as it was last year. Last year was because the two running backs were freaks. This year it could be because you've got a talented backfield, but your offensive line's way better. Doesn't mean that, well, maybe Jaren and Jeremiah weren't as good. Yeah, believe me, they were. It's just, it'll more be, man, I wish we could have seen Jeremiah and Jadarian running behind this line. It's more of that kind of thing than anything else.
I think the improved consistency in tight end blocking as well is going to play a factor.
That's a great point. Great point. Leave it to my tight end fans.
I was about to say, man, it's been a couple shows since I've brought up a tight end. I was starting to get the itch.
Did they hurt your feelings? Like, did they say something to you? Like, did they not? Did you meet like
nobody's responded to my fan mail, and I just
I keep emailing Cooper and James, and they never respond to me. It's terrible. I hate it. I get it. I understand.
Super chat from Black Irish 864. Appreciate you, Chris. Great show as usual. Thank you, Christopher.
Yes, sir. Very, very much. Really appreciate you. All right, let's get this one. Here we go.
From Salty, Aeneas Williams said that he wanted so much to participate in spring practice in the 2 games that he came back earlier than the medical staff might have wanted. Did he rush? No pun intended.
No, he can say that all he wants, but believe me, there's no player that's stepping foot on the football field until the medical staff clears him. There's no, well, we didn't want him to practice, but he insisted. No, they would literally go take his helmet.
Yeah.
And Marcus Freeman wouldn't allow it because if as a coach, you allow a kid back before the medical staff clears him and he gets hurt, you are getting sued. So that's just Aeneas, he was cleared. It's just more of we'd like to even be extra cautious. And he's like, no, I'm ready to go. But believe me, he was cleared to do anything. He was not doing anything that the medical staff did not give him the authority to do or the blessing to do. Because that'll be something, hey, listen, you're cleared now and you're good to go, but I'd advise you for the first couple of days back to not, blah, 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 blah. And then you may say, hey, I really want to do that. So that's why the medical staff, that's why a lot of times they'll just take your helmet. Like in a game, if a kid can't go, that's why they take their helmet. You ever wonder, like, why does that injured kid not have his helmet? Not allowed to have it. Because they know what kids will do is they'll put their helmet on, run over to the coach and say, hey, coach, I'm cleared. And then the medical staff like, hey, what's this kid doing in the game? So you take his helmet, you lock it away, and he can't do that. So, yeah. This is a good question, Trev. Something you and I had talked about the other day, or actually yesterday.
From Justin ND Sniper, will we have a 1,000-yard running back this season, or is it more likely that we see it split like 800, 400, 300 between a few running backs?
I'm leaning towards in the regular season more of a split that's going to look a little bit like 2022 is what I'm leaning towards. But it's certainly possible that I think if Notre Dame plays 15 games, they'll have a 1,000-yard rusher. Maybe 2. But I think regular season, it'll look more a little bit like this than it will 1,300 and 600 last year. I think that'll be like, because, this is 1,500 yards. I think they rush for more than 1,500 yards, the top 3 backs in the regular season. So I'd go like 800, 600, 300, something like that. And then the backups will get, some as well. Like I think all 5 of the backs on the roster will get double-digit carries next year.
Yeah, the model that I consistently refer to, maybe not model, but I guess the example that I consistently refer to is what the Georgia running back room did in 2022. I think that's a pretty good comp because in 21 they had Zamir White and James Cook, who that they took the lion's share of carries, and then in 2022 they had Kenny McIntosh, Dwan Edwards, Kendall Milton, and Branson Robinson. And once the season was all over, Kenny McIntosh had 829, Dwan Edwards had 769, Kendall Milton had 592, Branson Robinson had 330. Yep. And then Kenny McIntosh added 504 receiving yards, something that I could absolutely see Aeneas doing too.
Yep. I agree.
From Andre Tonsa, when recruiting, would you rather have a 5-star with okay traits or a 3-star with great traits? Just wanted to understand why many players are underrated or under-recruited.
Well, sometimes, people will put – first of all, I'd rather have – I mean, if a 3-star has great traits, he's not going to be a 3-star. It's a bad evaluation. If a 5-star has okay traits, he's not a 5-star. It's a bad evaluation. So I'd rather have a 3-star with great traits because that means the evaluation was bad and he's going to be a much better player. So why guys are underrated, under-recruited, sometimes it's availability. I've told the story before, I think, but when I went to Duquesne in 2002 or 2003, when I went to coach there, they had just lost the school's all-time leading receiver, and he was in minicamp with the Steelers. He was like 6'2", 225, ran like a 4.4 something at their Duquesne's pro day. And I said, how'd this guy end up at Duquesne? And they shared the story that in high school, he played in a triple option offense. He was a tight end in a triple option offense. And that's what high school coach did. And so nobody recruited him, but Duquesne took a flyer on him. And I was told the head coach, Greg Gattuso, told me the first day of camp, they told him to run a curl route. And he's like, what's a curl route? And they go, you run 12 yards and sit down. And they told me he ran 12 yards and sat down. Like, that's how raw the kid was. I still don't know if I believe that story, but they were adamant that he actually ran 12 yards and sat down, meaning sat on his booty on the ground. That's how raw he was as a football player. I don't know that I believe that, but they swore by it. But even if he didn't actually do that, the point is he didn't have a clue what he was doing. He didn't know football. And so he got overlooked because of the high school system he came from. Some guys are injured. Some guys are from areas that people just don't recruit. Or they say, sometimes they have high school kids that are, high school coaches that don't push their kids the right way, don't promote their kids the right way. And so there's a whole lot of different reasons. But sometimes why guys underrated is just because some guys peak differently. Some guys peak at different ages. Some guys, don't have the experience. Like Jason Onye played 2 years of high school football, really only one, and then COVID hit. He was a kid that went to Bishop Hendricken in Rhode Island to play basketball, and so that's why a lot of people didn't know who Jason Onye was. Some guys don't go to camp. There's a lot of reasons why. There's no one reason why, but sometimes guys are underrated simply because there's bad evaluations. I've said a long time, like back in the 2010s and 12s and 13s, when I first got into this, I said, look, I don't care what a guy's ranking was. If a Midwestern kid has an offer from Notre Dame, Iowa, and Michigan, I don't give a crap what his ranking is. He's a good player. That's just if those 3 schools want this kid, then he's a good player. I don't care what the recruiting services say. And 9 times out of 10, that turned out to be true. Because you know who desperately wanted Zach Martin and Chris Watt coming out of high school? Kirk Ferentz wanted them bad. Notre Dame was late to the party on Zach Martin. They didn't go to Zach Martin until they knew they weren't going to get Michael Schofield, who was going to Michigan. They wanted Michael Schofield more than Zach Martin. That's how dumb the Notre Dame coaching staff was from O-line recruiting back then. And it wasn't until they realized they were going to miss Zach Martin or Michael Schofield that they really turned the heat up on Zach Martin. Think about that. They thought Jake Golick was a better player than Tyler Eifert early on. Now, I'm not taking shots at Jake Golick at all. I'm simply saying sometimes you just make bad evals. Coaches do it, and recruiting services definitely do it. Do I need to name you the 16 quarterbacks that On3 had ranked ahead of C.J. Carr? Was that a C.J. Carr problem, or was that a Charles Power problem? That was a Charles Power problem. Now, there's others he gets right. I'm not trying to bang on Charles Power, but like CJ there was nothing wrong with CJ coming out of high school. It was your evaluation was poor. And I've had my fair share as well. Sometimes you miss on an evaluation because the kid doesn't do the work. I don't care what anybody says. I got Josh Barajas wrong, but I was wrong because of what he did when he got to Notre Dame. I still say the film was legit. Just go watch him at the Army All-American game. He was the best linebacker there for his team. It's just there were things that are more important than Josh Barajas than, playing football at Notre Dame. And that's why he went to an FCS school and still didn't play. Like, Notre Dame, Penn State, and me did not all miss that bad on that kid. You know what I mean? Like, there was something more to it. So there's a whole lot of things that go into why, kids are that way. So, yeah. And let's make this the last one, Trev.
From J. Melvin Bryan, after you went after that journalist that wrote that smear article on Notre Dame, I've got a new description for some of these people. It's called Notre Dame derangement syndrome.
That has been around for a little bit. I've used that. Other people have used that, but it fits really well. You're spot on with it. But it's not even about, I think there's part of that. Sean Stiers and I were talking about this earlier, and Sean said that he used to fight. It was Mike DeCourcy from Sporting News. And he said he used to follow him, but he got a sense that this guy's got a bit of a Jones about Notre Dame. There's something up his butt about Notre Dame. And for those who didn't see it, he wrote a very lazy article about why the ACC should tell Notre Dame to pound sand. And I've just taken on this new mantra where this whole it is what it is, don't give them oxygen. I'm sick of it because they're going to get the clicks no matter what, because it's just the lazy who was I was talking to earlier? He said he went on, so he listens to Brian Smith's podcast on Locked On. And if you guys are looking for more podcasts to watch, make sure you check out my guy Brian Smith's his portal podcast on Locked On. You definitely want to check out my guy Brian. But he said, he listened to his show, and then all these other Locked On things get recommended to his channel. And he's looking at Big 12 teams, the Big 12 thing, ACC, Pac-12, Big 10, and like all these schools or podcasts are talking about Notre Dame. Why? Because it sells. He didn't write that article for Notre Dame fans. He wrote that article to give spoiled, rotten meat to the slobbering, low IQ fans that just glob up to anything anti-Notre Dame. And he wrote a piss-poor article with piss-poor argumentation and cherry-pick stats. Well, North Carolina sells out all their games anyway. And? Okay, that's 1 out of 17 schools. How about the fact that Notre Dame had 19,000 more people at the Pitt game last year than Miami? And so I said, this is a dumb article. It's a lazy article. And he got all in his feelings about it. He's like, all you can do is insult. You can't prove me wrong. So, okay, I ain't that guy. I'm not that guy you want to challenge that you can't tell me why. You bet you want to bet? And so I wrote this long article basically, and I use stuff that's like verifiable. Like Sean Stiers and I are talking, like, there's things I could have put in there about, like you and I've talked about on the show. What do you think happens to the ACC when they go to renegotiate their next extension with the ESPN and Notre Dame has said, we're out, or they've given Notre Dame the boot? But here's where someone who is not a real journalist, but is masquerading as a journalist because he's now bought into this world of clickbait is king, where journalism used to be, if you don't get the facts right and you don't have a reasoned article, you're going to have a hard time making it. At least that's how I viewed it. Maybe I was naive and it was never that way. Now it's like if you write something or you do a podcast that speaks to the masses and gets you those clicks, even if it's ignorant. I mean, we see that in podcasting now, right? Like if you talk about Israel, you're going to get all these clicks now. So everybody's talking about Israel now, right? Or everybody's talking about this thing now. Everybody's talking about that now. We see it in sports now. What's the thing that gets people fired up? Take a shot at LeBron, which I don't have a problem with, or talk about Notre Dame, or whatever it is that is going to get the masses, the low IQ people, riled up. You do that even if you're saying stupid things because they're just going to believe you because it fits their narrative. And there's just not enough curious people. So I said, I'm sick of that. So you write this crap, I'm going to come at you, and guess what's going to happen after that? All my followers are going to come after you because of it. He didn't like that very much. But the thing I pointed out was I didn't even use all the stuff I could have used. I went data. He's like, well, I didn't cherry pick. I used the 2 teams they play. And I said, and you used them poorly and you ignored 12 years of data. So, for example, North Carolina has about 50,000 people in their stadium. So his ignorant comment was, Well, they're already going to sell out anyway. All right, cool. I know you're not that dumb. You've been writing at Sporting News for 2 decades. I know you're not a moron, Mike. I know you're not. But you're purposely doing this. You can't be this stupid to say, okay, yeah, they're going to have the same amount of people in the seats. But I know you know that tickets prices are not the same for every game. So even in your cherry-picked, ignorant example of North Carolina, you're lying to your audience because you know they're not smart enough to do any research because you know that they're just going to grab onto it. So, Trev, you and I have talked about this. You've had to buy tickets for games before, 2 home games and away games. And if you buy a North Carolina versus NC State game, it's going to cost you a whole lot less than if you buy a North Carolina versus Notre Dame game. So even if they have 50,000 people in the seats for each game, let's just go conservatively and say the average ticket price is $100 more, which I would argue is a very conservative estimate. That even if you sell the stadium out, that same number of people is going to give you it's actually over, it's a little over 50,000, over $5 million of additional revenue for just that one game. That doesn't include the fact that hotels in the area also raise the prices of hotels. I didn't even get into that because that's a little bit harder to prove, even though that's more anecdotal than just this is a data, this is a fact. So I gave graphics of here's what the tickets are going for right now for UNC and Louisville. Here's what tickets are going for right now for North Carolina and NC State. And here's what tickets are going for right now for North Carolina and Notre Dame. And he says, well, it's a few thousand people. Well, that's also disingenuous for the same exact reason. Like, think about that. The Pitt game. So let's say think about when you do it for a team like Pitt, where there's more people in the stands, and not only are you selling at least $100 more per ticket, but now you have 19,000 more people in the stadium than before. That's probably tens of millions of dollars of additional revenue just on tickets. And in this era, this was just a couple of games. In this era of schools are hurting for money and they're private equity and they're trying to get more money here, you're telling me there's no value to one game a year that could get you between minimum 5 to 10 million extra dollars? That's a 5-star quarterback, you moron. So you're going to sit there and tell me that you're trying to make a good argument? No. And the reason he got in his feelings and whined and cried and said, oh, you're insulting me. Now I'm calling you a name. Yesterday I didn't. Yesterday I just said your article is bad. I didn't call you a name. Now I am. Because you kept lying. The fact that he refuses to engage in anything I wrote is because he knows he's wrong. And he just didn't expect to be called on it. And so it's not as much Notre Dame derangement syndrome. It's I go where the money is. Well, what I'm going to start doing now is there's a price for going where the money is now. And that price is I'm going to just call your crap out. And that means all my followers are going to call your crap out. Because I'm sick of just sitting back and just taking the high road. I'm sick of doing what Notre Dame does and just taking the high road. I'm coming at you. Now, that's going to get me not invited to certain shows anymore. I don't think I'm going to be going back on, McElroy and Cole's show ever again. Probably not going to be on their show ever again. But I'm at the point now where I don't care. Because I'm sick of people being lazy. I'm sick of people making bad arguments. I'm sick of people of going at Notre Dame. And there's lots of ways to go at Notre Dame. With real things, say, this is where Notre Dame is wrong. This is why Notre Dame thinks that they're better than they are. And then he came back with me, well, they haven't won anything relevant in 30 years. Okay, fine. What's your point? That has nothing to do with what we're talking about. The ACC didn't bring in Notre Dame because they're going to win a football championship. They brought in Notre Dame because they're going to put butts in the seats and we're going to make money off of them. Do you know what the real thing that ACC ADs are pissed about? This is where if he had any kind of journalistic integrity, he could make 3 phone calls and come to find this out. Do you know what the ACC ADs are really pissed about? The majority of them? We don't get Notre Dame enough. We don't get them. They haven't been here in 7 years. We're not getting the benefit of it because they're not coming to our place. That's what most of them are pissed about. But yet you want to tell that team to take a hike? What they want is actually, they want Notre Dame to join. If Notre Dame brings no value, why do you want them to join? then say, hey, they're not going to join. So your next best option is, listen, Notre Dame, we got to go to 9 conference games. Our scheduling is getting a little jacked up. We want you guys for more, but we know you're not going to join. So here's the reality of it. Can we just get it to 6 games a year instead of 4 or 5? Can we get 6 games? That's what they should be doing instead of doing the crying they're doing now. And by the way, Daily Comments says context of the Notre Dame on the Miami Pitt game, Thanksgiving weekend, where students are home. Example, they had 51,000 for the BC game last year. Hate to break it to you, buddy, but they had 68,000 for the Notre Dame game. And a lot of Pitt students are in the area. They're not 12, 15 miles, hours away from home. If Notre Dame went to Pitt on Thanksgiving weekend, there's going to be 68,000 people in the stands. So maybe you'd have got 3 or 4 extra thousand. It wasn't going to be anywhere close. Clemson's the only other team that's been able to draw anything close to that. And they had 61,000 in the stands last year for Clemson, who was ranked at the time. So with all due respect, that's not the case. I'd also like to point out that Miami had the most views of any TV views of any ACC team last year with 36.7 million. 29% of those views were from the Notre Dame game. 10.8 million of their 36.7 views. Notre Dame got 3.4 million views for the Navy game. Miami got 740,000 for the South Florida game. These two things are not the same. Doesn't mean that Miami's not a better program or whatever. It's just about drawing power. That's why the ACC wants them in the league. Notre Dame had hundreds of more thousands of viewers for Stanford than Miami had for Stanford. Notre Dame had more viewers. Actually, I put the graphic up in my tweet yesterday, Trevor, because I like to, if you're going to go at somebody, go at them with data. Don't go at them with your feelings and all this other crap that people do that drives me nuts. Go at them with data. So here's the data. TV viewerships. Were people not watching TV on Thanksgiving weekend either? Because the millions of viewers for the Notre Dame Pitt game was 3.96 million. For Miami, it was 2.22. For Syracuse, 1.89 for Notre Dame, 1.2 for Miami. For Stanford, 1.52 for Notre Dame, 1.21 for Miami. And that was with a 10 o'clock kickoff as well. So I can point to all these things and show you that Notre Dame outpaced Miami in every capacity. Doesn't mean that Notre Dame is better than Miami or Notre Dame's a better program. This is simply about what's the financial value to that. And the reality is that Notre Dame brings seats. And talk to anybody that's gone to watch Pitt or watch a Notre Dame Pitt game. And I have friends that live in Pittsburgh, and they're like, it's way more expensive to go to a Notre Dame Pitt game than it is to go to a Pitt versus anybody else game. And not just because of the price of the tickets. It's also the hotels cost a lot more. So it brings a lot more to the community. So those are the things that you point to. And if he had any desire to be any at all journalistically, have any journalistic integrity, he would have wrote a very different article than the one he wrote. And I'm just at the point now where if I see it, I'm going to push back on it. And the final thing is, it's the same article we've seen written for 5 years. Be original. Don't be lazy. Just give me something. Make an argument that I haven't heard before. I feel like Eminem at the end of the rap battle. You're saying the same, he said, meathead. Like, I've heard this before. Tell the people something they don't know about me. This has been said before. And I expect that from someone who's been doing this for 29 years, as he said. All right, Brian Kelly. So that's my whole point, man. It's like, this is why I keep winning these debates, Trevor. It's not I'm a great debater. It's just I give you facts. The facts are what they are.
That's a fact.
Yeah. Insured by Big. How about this? Go Tigers. Hey, if an SEC fan wants to have this conversation, we'd be having a different conversation. Notre Dame doesn't have the same influence in an SEC contract as they would Notre Dame because there is already a big natural audience there. But that's nothing to do with the ACC. And so, yeah, I just, yeah, it's, I'm just kind of tired of it, to be honest with you. So now I'm just going to go at them. If you do that crap, I'm going to go at them.
Understandably so. I think where a lot of people get frustrated, well, not frustrated, where a lot of like the Notre Dame, anti-Notre Dame stuff comes from is they want to be able to say that Notre Dame is irrelevant while also not being able to acknowledge how much money that they make.
Yeah.
I think that's the biggest thing.
Yeah.
That's where people get very frustrated in their faulty logic.
Yeah. I'm just tired of it, Trev. Again, just come up with something original. Is that too much to ask?
To some people it is.
Yeah, it's just, come on. It's just, that's not too much to ask. It really isn't. I'm actually trying to find the ratings for Notre Dame and NC State. Do you remember what week that was, Trev? Because that's the one game.
23?
Yeah, in 25 this past year.
That was week 6.
Yeah, I'm trying to find it here real quick. But anyway, I can't find it. Or was that the game was on Peacock?
Might have been.
Okay. I think that might have been.
Boise State was on Peacock.
Okay. Yeah. I'll have to try and find it. I can't find it right now. But the one game I could not find was the ratings for Notre Dame and NC State compared to Miami's. So anyway, that's that.
Well, folks, that's going to do it for us here today on the Irish Breakdown Podcast, brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Now, if you haven't gotten enough of me, I will be on IB Nation Sports Beat tonight. Part 1 is going to be a mailbag, so put in your questions. We'll get those answered, and then part 2, we're diving into rapid fire. Brian and I will be back tomorrow to continue the State of the Program series, talking about the defensive backs. Not going to want to miss that show. On your way out of this show, be sure to hit that like, hit that subscribe, hit that notification bell. Be sure to share this podcast with your friends, family, anybody that you know loves Notre Dame and college football as much as you do. But as always, the best way to support what we do here and the best way to stay in tune is be a premium message board subscriber at boards.irishbreakdown.com. So I will see you later this evening. And then until tomorrow, that is Brian. I'm Trevor. See you back here very soon on the Irish Breakdown Podcast.
It'll be a fun day tomorrow.